some disturbing horror stories from Reddit. My daughter drew a picture of our house. There's a window in it we don't have. Written by Dude, It's Brian. I need to type this out because I don't know who else to tell. My wife thinks I'm losing it. Maybe I am, but I know what I saw, and I need someone, anyone, to tell me I'm not crazy. My daughter Lily is 6. She's in that phase where she draws everything. The dog, her teacher, our house, you name it. The fridge is wallpapered in crayon. I love it. Every stick figure with its wild spaghetti hair makes me smile. That's what dads do. We stick the pictures up and tell them it's beautiful, and we mean it. 3 weeks ago, Lily handed me a drawing of our house. It was good for a 6-year-old. She got the color right, that faded blue vinyl siding we kept saying we'd get replaced. She drew the red front door, the 2 big windows on the first floor, the 2 on the second floor, and the little round attic vent near the peak. Except, she also drew a window on the second floor that doesn't exist. I didn't think much of it at first. She's 6. Kids add stuff. They put chimneys on ranch houses and give dogs 5 legs. I stuck it on the fridge with a ladybug magnet and I forgot about it. Then she drew the house again 2 days later. Same window, same spot, between our bedroom and the bathroom on the east-facing wall. In real life, that wall is just drywall on our side and siding on the outside. No window. Never has been one. I checked the original listing photos from when we first bought the place in 2019. No window. I asked her about it. Lily, what's this window here? She didn't look up from her coloring. That's the window where the man watches. I want to tell you, my blood ran cold, or whatever people say in these stories. It didn't. I felt annoyed. I figured one of her friends at school had been telling her ghost stories again, or she'd seen something on that damn iPad when we weren't looking. Kids say creepy shit all the time. I have a buddy whose 4-year-old told him you were nicer in your last life. Kids are just like that. What man, sweetheart? The man who lives in the middle. I ask her what the middle means. She shrugged the way kids do when they're done talking about something. Went back to giving a dinosaur purple spots. I let it go. I should not have let it go. Here's some context about our house. It's a 1987 colonial in a subdivision outside Raleigh. 4 bedrooms, 2.5 baths, 2,400 square feet. When we moved in, the previous owners had already gutted and redone the kitchen and both bathrooms. Everything was original, including, presumably, the layout. The wall Lily kept drawing the window on sits between our master bedroom and the hall bathroom. On our side, there's a dresser pushed up against it. On the bathroom side, there's the linen closet. I've never given it a second thought in 5 years of living here. After the second drawing, I went upstairs and stood in the hallway. I looked at that wall. It's maybe 12 feet long, running from the bathroom door to where it meets the exterior wall. The linen closet takes up about 3 feet of it. Our dresser is pushed up against the bathroom side and covers maybe 4 feet. That leaves about 5 feet of wall that nothing is pushed against on either side. I knocked on it. I don't know why. I think I expected to feel stupid and move on. It sounded different. Our interior walls are standard drywall over studs. You knock on them and you get that hollow thud that everyone knows. This section, the section with nothing on either side of it, didn't thud. It was deeper, flatter, like there was more air behind it than there should have been. I told myself it was probably just a difference in insulation. Maybe a duct ran through there. Maybe the stud spacing was wider in that section. Old houses are weird. Ours isn't even that old, but whatever. I rationalized it and moved on. Then I went outside. I don't know what made me do it, some nagging part of my brain maybe. I walked out the front door, down the driveway, and turned around to look at the east side of the house. I counted windows. First floor, kitchen window, dining room window, correct. Second floor, master bedroom window, bathroom window, guest room window, correct. And about 5 feet of blank siding between the bedroom window and the bathroom window. Just vinyl. No window, no patch, no outline of anything that had ever been a window. But I stood there staring at it. And I swear to God, the spacing was wrong. Here's what I mean. On a house like ours, the windows are evenly distributed. They line up with the rooms behind them, and the gaps between them are proportional. But the gap between our bedroom window and the bathroom window was wider than it should have been. Not by a lot, maybe 2 feet, but once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. 2 feet isn't much on a wall, but 2 feet is enough for something to be between them. I couldn't sleep that night. I lay there staring at the ceiling while my wife Sarah breathed slow and steady next to me. I kept doing math in my head. Our master bedroom is 14 feet wide. The bathroom is 8. The hallway is 3.5. That's 25.5 feet of interior space. I got up, went downstairs, and pulled up the county property records on my laptop. The house footprint showed the second floor as 31 feet across on the east-west axis. I did the math 4 times. Every time I got the same answer. There were 5.5 unaccounted feet in that wall. Not 2, not a duck chase, 5.5 feet. At 2 a.m., I went back upstairs with a tape measure. I measured the master bedroom wall to wall, 14 feet, 2 inches. I measured the hallway, 3 feet, 8 inches. I measured the bathroom, 8 feet even. I measured the guest bedroom on the other side. The thickness of interior walls accounted for roughly another 10 inches total. I was off by about 5 feet, 4 inches. There was a space inside our wall that was 5 feet wide, and I had no idea what was in it. I pressed my ear against the drywall in the hallway, the section that sounded wrong. I held my breath. The house was dead silent. That 3 a.m. silence where even the refrigerator feels loud. I didn't hear anything. I think that's what scared me the most. Because I was listening for something. And the silence that came back was the wrong kind. You know how you can hear the difference between an empty room and a room where someone is being very, very quiet? It was the second kind. The next morning, I told Sarah. She gave me that look. The one she uses when I'm being on my 3rd cup of coffee and spiraling about something I read online at 1 a.m. Brian, it's an old house. There's probably a plumbing chase or a mechanical shaft or something. You're gonna tear our wall open because Lily drew a window? She wasn't wrong. Not entirely. Plumbing chases exist. HVAC shafts exist, but 5 feet wide? Every chase I've ever seen in a residential build is maybe 16 to 20 inches. You don't need 5 feet to run some PVC and copper. I called my buddy Marcus, who does contracting work. He came by that Thursday with a stud finder and an inspection camera. One of those little borescope things you snake through a hole. We started in the hallway. The stud finder picked up a framing at normal 16-inch intervals across most of the wall. Then it hit a section where it went haywire. The readings were inconsistent, like there was framing, then open air, then something else, then more framing. Marcus drilled a small hole in the drywall about 4 feet up. 1/4 inch. Nothing structural. He fed the camera in. He looked at the screen for maybe 5 seconds before he pulled back. "What?" I said. He looked at me with an expression I've never seen on his face before. Marcus is a big dude, built like a linebacker, and he's been doing construction for 20 years. He's crawled through attics with rat infestations and gone under crawl spaces that smelled like something died. Nothing phases him. He handed me the camera without saying a word. The screen showed a narrow space, maybe 5 feet wide, just like I'd calculated. It ran floor to ceiling, rough framing on either side. The camera's LED illuminated raw plywood flooring, no insulation, no pipes, no ductwork, nothing mechanical at all. It was just a room. A tall, narrow room sealed inside our wall. No door, no window, no access point that we could see from this angle. But that's not why Marcus looked like that. On the far side of the space, pushed up against what would be the exterior wall, there was a chair. A wooden chair, like a kitchen chair. It was facing the interior wall, facing toward our bedroom. And on the plywood floor around the chair, arranged in a pattern I couldn't immediately make sense of, were dozens of small, dark objects. The camera resolution wasn't great, but I could make out shapes. They looked like bundles, little fabric bundles tied with string. Is that? I started. We need to call someone, Marcus said. Not me, someone else. I'm not going in there, man. I'm sorry. I can't do that. I didn't understand his reaction until I tilted the camera up towards the ceiling of the space. Scratched into the raw wood of the subfloor above, the underside of our attic floor were tally marks. Hundreds of them, organized in neat groups of 5, covering almost every visible surface. And below the tally marks, in letters that have been carved slowly, deliberately, with something sharp, I can hear them sleep. I called the police. Of course I called the police. 2 officers came out, and then a detective, and then more people. They opened the wall from the hallway side, cut through the drywall in a wide rectangle. The smell came first. Not rot, not decay. It smelled stale, like air that hadn't moved in a very long time, but also faintly sweet, in a way that made my stomach turn. The space was exactly what the camera showed. 5 feet, 4 inches wide, ran the full depth of the house, about 24 feet front to back, floor to ceiling, framed out with proper studs and joists. This wasn't a gap or an oversight. Someone had built this space on purpose. It was in the original construction. The chair was a standard wooden kitchen chair, the kind you'd buy at a yard sale for $5. It was positioned facing the wall shared with our bedroom. Directly on the other side of that wall was the spot where our bed's headboard sits. The bundles on the floor were small fabric pouches, hand-stitched from what looked like old cotton. The police collected 26 of them. They wouldn't tell me what was inside. I found out later from a friend at the sheriff's department. Hair. Each pouch contained a small lock of hair, tied with brown thread. Different lengths, different colors. Our house has had 4 owners since it was built in 1987. That's 4 families. Multiple people in each family. People who slept on the other side of that wall, never knowing. The tally marks on the ceiling numbered over 3,000. The detective asked me if I'd ever noticed anything unusual in the house. I said no. Then I stopped, because that wasn't always true. I'd always wondered why our bedroom door wouldn't stay open. You had to wedge something under it or it would drift shut on its own, slowly, like the house was exhaling. We always assumed the first floor was slightly uneven. Old house. Settling. But I realize now that the floor wasn't uneven. The wall was. 5 feet and 4 inches of hidden space will do that. The weight distribution of the second floor was asymmetric in a way that no one had ever noticed. And it pulled our bedroom door gently closed every single time, sealing us in. The police found one more thing that I haven't told Sarah about. On the wall facing our bedroom, at about chest height, someone had made a hole. Not a big one, maybe the diameter of a pencil. It went clean through the framing, through the drywall, and came out behind our dresser. I moved the dresser. The hole was there, clean, round, and angled slightly downward, toward our bed. It had been patched on our side at some point with a tiny circle of matching paint. You would never see it unless you knew where to look. I've been sleeping 6 feet from that hole for 5 years. The police are investigating. They pulled the original building permits and are trying to track down the contractor who built the house in '87. The original owner died in 2004. The second and third owners have been contacted. No one knew about the space. But here's the thing that keeps me up at night. The thing I keep circling back to. Those tally marks. Over 3,000. If you assume 1 mark per night and the neat, methodical grouping in 5 suggests that's exactly how they were counted, that's over 8 years of nights. Our house was built in 1987. The first owners lived there from '87 to '96. 9 years. The second owners, '96 to 2008, 12 years. Third owners, 2008 to 2019, 11 years. Us, 2019 to now, 5 years. 3,000 tally marks don't fit inside any single owner's timeline, but they could fit across several, which means either someone sealed themselves in that space for 8 years straight, no food, no water, no door, or someone has been getting in and out without any of us ever knowing. I've looked everywhere. There's no hatch, no hidden door, no panel. The space is sealed, framed, drywalled, and sealed on every side. The only opening was the pencil-width hole behind our dresser, and the chair wasn't dusty. I keep thinking about that. The bundles on the floor were carefully placed. The tally marks were sharp, not faded, and when they opened the wall, the air that came out was stale. Yes. Old. Yes. But it was warm. We're staying at my in-laws' place. Lily seems fine. She hasn't drawn the house since we left. I asked her one more time about the man who watches from the window. He's not there anymore, Daddy. How do you know? She looked at me like I'd asked the dumbest question in the world. Because he left when we did. I don't know where we're going to live. I don't know if I'll ever feel safe in a house again. But I keep thinking about those other families. The ones who slept in that bedroom for years. Their heads against that wall while someone sat in a chair on the other side and listened. 3,000 nights. Someone counted every single one. And I think about all the houses in our subdivision. Same builder, same year, same floor plan. There are 46 houses on our street. I wonder how many of them have a window that isn't there. Episode number 1564, written by No Ideal Way. I had to sleep with my parents far longer than most kids do. They woke me up nearly every night, at least until I learned to do it myself. I wasn't allowed at sleepovers because of their fear that something would go terribly wrong. When I needed it, they would help me gain consciousness by kneading my armpits and knee pits. The neurologist said that if the hyperventilation continued to cause seizures, I could lose my ability to speak, my memory, and my overall independence. So they had to adapt, and it cost me most of my childhood. When I finally figured out how to wake myself up, the sleep paralysis got better in some ways and worse in others. I was able to get the breathing problems under control, but the dream state hallucinations escalated. A little boy wearing a disfigured horse head like a mask, a young woman hanging in the corner of my room, her neck bent downward with her chin buried in her chest, my father without his mouth or eyes. The stork man was appearing more frequently. He started looming closer to my face while I was in these catatonic states. He would whisper to me in a language that I've never been able to decipher, often for what felt like hours. But when it got bad, I'd remember my 5-step plan. Step 1, recognize that you're dreaming. You can't move and you're seeing things. This is not reality. Step 2, stay calm. It will only get worse if you start panicking. Step 3, wiggle. Start with your toes. They're always awake, just like your mind is right now. Wiggle them. You're not moving. You're not paralyzed. Continue to your ankles, and then your knees and hips. Step 4, sit up when you can. Sit up. Don't panic and sit up. Step 5, you're awake now. Write down what you can remember. You'll learn from your experience. It's been about 17 years since I first implemented the plan. I've now documented over 1,500 episodes. Some only last a couple of seconds. Most make it harder to fall asleep the next night. Lately, the main constant I can rely on is my wife. Having someone you trust beside you helps. She keeps me grounded. The hallucinations aren't always as vivid, and she often helps me wake up without my usual procedure. I still have bad nights, but she's there to comfort me when it's over. She helps me log everything with more detail so I continue making progress. She's also been trying to get to the bottom of my issue, even though my psychiatrist has reinforced the same diagnosis that my neurologist gave me years ago. Hereditary narcolepsy, they call it. I'm not like the narcoleptics you may think of. I don't fall asleep at random times like a goat that's been jump scared. I really don't even have issues with daytime sleepiness. I'm tired at normal times, unless I experience a bad episode that keeps me up. The main distinction with my diagnosis is that my brain functions like it's on LSD once I enter REM sleep. For normal people, their REM cycle causes a vivid dream state where their brain is highly active, but regulated. This mirrors the brain activity of consciousness. It's called paradoxical sleep. My brain works in overdrive once I enter REM. It works exponentially harder, even than when I'm awake, and it's not regulated. I can sense all of my surroundings like they're one and the same with my body. I experience these severe hallucinations, and my hyperactive vitals are always a threat. All of this while my body is in a state of atonia. If I were to ever unable to wake up, if I was stuck in my sleep paralysis, my heart could work itself into a rupture. I'd asphyxiate on my own blood while sleeping. That's the other sentiment that my doctors have shared. It's a miracle that I haven't died. Despite this diagnosis, my wife believes that the stork man is the root of my issue, that he means something to my subconscious. I didn't buy this theory until the other night, when he whispered to me in a different language. It was hardly noticeable. but it didn't involve the guttural clicks and deep exhalations that I'm used to hearing. It was more clear. It was human. Ro-na-shi. I butchered the pronunciation when I squirmed to life in a cold sweat, shaking my wife awake to announce the sudden development, and she recognized something about this word, that it was likely Latin. So we stayed up through the morning, combing the Latin dictionary until there were no doubts about what I heard. Renashi, the Latin root of the modern word renaissance, a verb that means to be born again. It makes sense, right? For a stork to tell me this? To imply something about birth and about change? It's odd now, looking back to when I first started calling him the Stork Man. I was very young, probably with only a couple of bird species in my lexicon. It's not like he looks like any particular type of bird. His beak is long, like that of a stork or heron, but it's more of a fleshy protrusion than one of hard cartilage. His eyes are positioned at the side of his face, wide and always glaring. And perhaps his most disturbing feature hides behind his thin, veiled shawl. He's shown them to me on a number of occasions. They touch the floor despite his 7-foot frame with ease, jagged, emaciated, and gnarled. Each malformed crank coupled with localized blooms of misshapen feathers that segment his otherwise unclothed, leathery appendages. His disgusting wings. They often rub up against me as he puffs into my frozen face with his clicks and gurgles. It's a traumatic event every time I encounter him, but it's routine. Following this episode from him just over a week ago, my wife and I expanded on our theory about my nemesis in my subconscious. It had to mean something that I initially named him what I did. And after all this time, he says this? We wondered if this thing about rebirth could relate to the recent curbing of my symptoms. Before that encounter, I hadn't experienced a memorable hallucination in 94 days. By far, the longest stretch that I can recall. She brought up the possibility that the Stork Man could be threatening me with an incoming assault of visions. His sudden voice could be a war cry against my dream self, saying that the ailment was about to come back stronger than ever. I countered this thought process. It was certainly possible that the opposite was true. Maybe I was finally conquering this, reforming myself, and the Stork Man was simply saying his goodbyes. But along the way, I forgot something. The first step of my 5-step plan. The reminder that I'm not dealing with real beings that have goals. They are hallucinations. The Stork Man is not real. He didn't just appear to relay something to my subconscious. He is my subconscious, just like every other hallucination I've ever had. And that realization made us panic. Our little boy turned 5 years old the night the Stork Man spoke to me. That was the age that I first saw him, at least from what my parents told me. The terrifying reality is that I carry the recessive gene that could pass this horrible sickness onto our boy. My subconscious was preparing me for even more years of trauma, telling me that my disease would rekindle itself within my child. It had been warning me of this possibility for years. My poor wife would now be dealing with constant panic attacks in the middle of the night, not knowing if the two people she loved the most would wake up, not knowing if one of us, or both, would die, frozen in fear. So all we could do was wait. My wife was sleeping in his room every night, waiting, knowing that I was equipped to wake myself up, knowing that our child wouldn't be able to do the same should he have his first run-in. Night after night, monitoring his sleep like a security guard, protecting an empty warehouse. And she was right about the incoming assault. I experienced some of the worst episodes of my life in that span, night after night, my darkest visions manifested themselves all at once. The horse boy climbing on top of me like a jungle gym, whining at his gold cowl bobbled and sloshed with every sudden and excited movement. My mother, who OD'd when I was in my teens, sobbing aggressively as she knelt, praying at the foot of my bed, begging for my forgiveness. The woman that was hanging, now directly above me, close enough that I smelled her rotting feet as they dangled over me. Her bent neck angled so far downward that her dead face stared at me straight on, mouth unnaturally agape, like she wanted to tell me something. It all culminated tonight. Episode number 1564. The stork man entered my room as he usually does. He faced through the wall directly in front of me, beak first. He cocked his head, showing me his left eye and then his right, wide and focused. The shawl dropped to reveal his vile limbs. His talons scratched the hardwood as he glitched forward with his bird-like mannerisms. He whispered and rattled, but it was coherent. Renasi. He towered over my carcass. I tried to wiggle. I knew what was happening. Nothing worked. He hunched over me, saliva seeping out of his improperly sealed gape. He wheezed again. Renasi. I was looking directly into his mouth. It was darker than black. He stopped further, now closer than ever. He opened wide enough for me to understand blindness. I couldn't even see the black, just nothingness. I felt him swallowing my immobile head with his proboscis, wet and cold, rancid smelling. His throat rippled, and then it was loud. Renasi. Blinded by him, deafened by him, I could still feel him. Time was irrelevant, but it had to be forever. And then I woke up, back in my childhood bed. And now I'm sitting here, writing everything down. I have no way to explain to myself what just happened. I'm looking around my room, remembering things that I haven't thought about in years. My pile of PS4 games is still on the floor in the corner. My unopened second edition Bumblebee figurine is staring at me from the shelf that my dad and I built specifically for him. I wonder if he saw anything. My mom is whimpering as she did often. I have a feeling they know I'm here. Why didn't they wake me up? Maybe I'll go check on her. But I'm still trying my best to remember. The episodes stand out the most. They might be all I have. I remember getting married in New Orleans. I remember the honeymoon in Italy. I remember our arguments about the baby. I remember taking him to his first rodeo. I remember how much he loved it, just like I do. I remember her depression after he was born. I think I forgot to pick up her prescription. I've remembered as best I can, but I can't remember their names. I can't remember their faces. I wasn't allowed to see my face. Written by FreeRing573. Most of my childhood was spent in the same 20 square miles of forest, somewhere in the Appalachian wilderness. I lived there with my mom in this cabin she claims to have built with her own two hands. I believed her for a while, though now I'm fairly certain she just found an abandoned cabin and fixed it up as best she could. It was so cold in the winter, and the small fires we managed to produce in the fireplace did little to warm the area. Most winter nights were spent with us cuddled under the same blanket. During the summers, the cabin was so humid that you could see the wood sweating. Often we'd opt for sleeping outside on summer nights. despite the clouds of mosquitoes that the makeshift netting my mom made from old fabric did little to quell. The multitude of bug bites was preferable to waking up dehydrated from sweat, though. Our days back then were mostly spent with my mom hunting for small animals to cook and eat, while I gathered firewood and picked berries. On rare occasions, we would take breaks and spend the day singing songs or reading from the handful of books she had. However, we needed to survive, and that meant working hard to ensure we had food and fresh water. My mask made foraging more difficult than it should have been. I constantly had to pull out the white cotton sheet to fit the eye holes over my eyes, and it would often become drenched in sweat within an hour. The only time I ever took off my mask was when my mom bathed me. I would often try to catch my reflection in the water, but it was never clean enough. I wondered if she'd ever seen my face. She would have had to have seen it on the day I was born, right? I learned early on not to ask my mom questions that involved the masks or my face. The only answer I ever received was that if I took off my mask in front of someone, something bad would happen. If I pushed any further, she would say, "I'm your mother, and you should trust that I know what's best." And I did, for a long time. My mother was my whole world, and I loved her as much as a boy could. We spent most of our time together, and I have mostly happy memories of her. Of course, there are bad memories sprinkled in there, with some being downright horrible. I recall once when I was somewhere between 4 and 6. I was playing outside in our garden. Mom was on the other side of the yard doing laundry while I hopped through the soft dirt, stepping on any pests I saw. Looking at their guts on the underside of my shoes every time I stepped on one filled me with a sense of satisfaction, knowing I was aiding in our survival in a small way. I'd made my way to the end of the garden when I noticed the rabbit cage. Mom had kept several sheet cotton traps to breed for meat. She told me not to get attached to any of them, as we'd be eating them all at some point. But of course, I'd given them all names and loved sticking my fingers in the cage to feel their soft fur. One of the females, whom I'd named Daisy, after a character in one of Mom's books, was staring at me. She chewed on whatever vegetation she had in her mouth as I approached. She didn't scurry or hide like all the others in the cage, instead continuing to look me in the eyes. The curious way she watched me made me smile underneath my mask. We looked at each other for a while before I got the sudden urge to untie the twine from my neck. It fell to the ground, and I slowly pulled the mask away from my face. Daisy continued staring as I moved my bare face closer to hers. A warmth fell over me as she stared. The feeling of having someone, even a small-minded creature like a rabbit, see my real face was almost euphoric. The rabbit didn't cower, as I thought it might upon seeing my face. The way my mom pushed to keep my face hidden made me think there was something horrible about it. But if there was, Daisy didn't care. She didn't look at me any differently than she might my mom or one of the other rabbits. It made me smile brighter than I ever had. "Nestor," called my mom from around the corner. I struggled to grab my mask from the ground and throw it back to my face, but it was too late. Mom grabbed me by the shoulder while staring at the sky and smacked the back of my head hard enough to make my vision blur. "Put your mask back on right now," she cried. I did as she asked, and she pulled me away from the scene, leaving Daisy still staring in the spot where I'd been standing. We had Daisy for dinner that night. Mom didn't have to tell me. As I'd seen her take Daisy from the cage from my bedroom window, I listened to her frantic squeaks before Mom likely broke her neck, as was her common method for killing our dinner. Daisy lay in a charred pile in the center of the table that night. Mom pulled off one of her legs and threw it on my plate. "Eat," she said. Tears soaked the inside of my mask as I pulled down the mouth hole a bit so it sat as close to my mouth as I could get it. I picked up Daisy's leg and brought it to my lips. "Eat," she yelled. I took a bite of the unseasoned meat and tore it away from the bone. I closed my eyes while chewing and swallowed. Mom nodded and began eating some breast meat, satisfied. "Do you realize what could have happened if I accidentally saw you without your mask?" she asked. "No, you won't tell me," I returned defiantly. Mom paused as if trying to gather her thoughts. She sighed, then gave her constant answer of something bad. I felt my mask, poking at the small holes that had begun to form along the neck. I'd have a new one the first time I met another person. Like the last mask, this one was made from cloth, but it was a bit thicker, as if it were made from a thick jacket. Despite this, it breathed better, making the summer trips collecting berries a bit more bearable. I was 8 or 9 years old during one of these trips, and several yards from us, I spotted a bush covered in red berries. We avoided the green berries, but most of what we ate was dark purple and bitter. However, the red ones had a sweet, tangy flavor that I still crave sometimes. I rushed over to them, carrying my basket in tow. I hadn't gotten used to my long legs and arms from my growth spurt earlier that year, so I awkwardly flopped around before reaching the bush. As I approached, I moved a little, like something was inside. I moved closer, assuming it was a squirrel or some other small critter I could easily fight off. A mop of blonde hair poked out from the side of the bush. I rounded it to see the back of a kid. They turned as soon as I approached, and I was met with a blue-eyed, skinny blonde girl. She was around my age. Her hair fell past her shoulders, and it was full of leaves. The dirt stains on her clothes and scratches across her bare legs told me she'd been in the woods a while. "Hi," the girl said with a bright smile. I backed away a bit. "Why are you wearing a mask? Are you a superhero?" she asked with a mocking laugh. "Superhero?" I asked. "Yeah," she returned before reaching into her back pocket and pulling out a rolled comic book. She handed it to me, and I saw Spider-Man written on the front. It was the first time I'd ever seen anyone else in a mask, though this was a lot cooler than mine. "You should wear one like him instead," the girl said. The sound of leaves crunching sounded behind me, and I saw my mom approach with her bow and arrow. Her eyes widened when she noticed the girl. "Hello," the girl said. I watched my mom's hands shake as she held the bow and arrow tightly against her side. Another sound came from behind the girl, and Mom quickly lifted the weapon. It was a man with a large brown beard. He spotted my mom instantly and threw his hands up in submission while slowly moving in front of the girl. "Who are you?" Mom asked. Hello," he said. "I'm Monty, and this is my daughter, Jamie. We're camping nearby. Sorry, I didn't know we were on someone's property." Mom refused to lower the bow and arrow. "You need to leave." "Is this your property?" the man asked. Mom bit her lip, and her arms started to shake. "Yes," she said. "Would the parks office confirm that if I called?" he asked. Mom lowered the bow a little. "Jamie, why don't you go find some firewood?" he said. "But Dad..." "Go!" Jamie pursed her lips and glanced at me before stomping away. "Look, if you're this deep in the woods, I assume you're hiding from something just like we are," he said to my mom before looking at me and raising his eyebrow. "We don't want any trouble, but I don't care what you're doing out here, honestly." "See that tree?" Mom said, pointing to the tallest one in the area. "Don't cross it again. You or your girl." "You got it," Monty said with a smile. And with that, my mom lowered her weapon. "I was just bluffing, by the way. I ain't got a phone. Too easy to track." Mom grabbed me by the arm and pulled as we started walking back home. "If you ever want to trade some of your kills, let me know," he said. "We've got plenty of beans and rice." Mom ignored him. "We're in the RV down the trail about 2 miles, he called. I looked back and saw the girl waving. I didn't stop looking until they disappeared in the distance. I helped Mom gut the rabbit she'd caught us for dinner, holding the bag for the innards as she ripped them out of the small creature. She hadn't said much since we met the father and daughter in the woods, and I couldn't tell if she was concerned or mad. I knew I should avoid bringing it up, but I couldn't help myself. I thought you said there was no one else in these woods, I said as she placed a handful of viscera into the bag. There weren't, she said, and I need to figure out a way to get rid of them. Why? I asked. They didn't seem dangerous. She paused. Everyone is dangerous, Nestor. I dropped my head and stared into the bag for a while, not meaning to. My eyes got lost in the red and pink mixture that slid with every slight movement. The image of the girl plopped into my head and wouldn't seem to leave. You're thinking about her, aren't you? Mom asked. Over time, I've learned many moms have this ability to predict exactly what their child is thinking, or at least offer a good guess. She was around your age. I looked at my mom, then back into the bag. She dropped the rabbit onto the wood slab and knelt in front of me. I know you're lonely, but you know it has to be this way, she said. But why? I asked. You never tell me. I tell you that you need to trust me, she said before standing back up. And that should be the only explanation you need. It wasn't, though. I don't know if it was the fact that my mind was changing in adolescence or I'd finally had enough, but I'd already started thinking of ways I could sneak away and meet that girl again. I know what will make you feel better, Mom said before taking off her blood-stained gloves and going inside. She came back out a few minutes later, holding something behind her back. She stopped in front of me, and my hands started to shake with excitement. I'd never gotten a gift before and never expected one. The feeling of excitement was something I hadn't had much experience with. She paused for a few more moments as I felt I was about to burst. She finally revealed what looked like a light brown mass, the color of a dying tree. She smiled as she handed it to me. It felt smooth and almost sticky. I pulled the edges apart to see that it was a new mask, but it was nothing like the ones I'd had before. This one had actual facial features. A mouth with lips, a nose like my mom's, and eyebrows. I made it with rabbit skins, she said. I thought you'd like to have it, that one that looks like an actual face. I stared at it, trying to appear grateful but struggling to understand how I actually felt. Well, try it on, she said. I did as she asked, pulling the thin leather across my head into my neck. It fit tightly against my head. The eye holes were perfectly situated so I wouldn't have to pull the mask down to see. You probably won't want to wear it in the summer, but I tried to make it more comfortable and durable than your last one. I breathed in the gamey smell of the leather and pressed my tongue against the inside of my mouth. Well, what do you think? She asked. Thanks, I said, wishing it looked more like Spider-Man's. Mom was always exhausted after a day of hunting, especially during the summer. It was almost impossible to wake her up. Once she fell asleep, I snuck out of the cabin and into the woods. I followed the path, remembering what Monty said about the RV being 2 miles down the trail. As I walked in the darkness, I wondered why I was trying so hard to see this girl again. I'd been fine living my whole life without anyone besides Mom. I'd begun to wonder if that feeling of complacency came from a secluded life. I'd been walking for around half an hour when I heard voices a few yards away. I ducked into the nearby trees and spotted a fire that gave way to a dingy brown RV. Monty sat in a chair beside the fire while Jamie danced around it. I moved closer without meaning to, not realizing I was no longer hidden. Jamie spotted me as she rounded the fire. I watched her say something to him before she came skipping towards me. Hey, Spider-Man, she said. I like your new mask. Thanks, I said. My name is Nestor. I like Spider-Man better, she said. Come on, I told my dad I was going to pee, but I want to show you something. She grabbed my hand and pulled me into the woods. Her hand was soft and warm, despite it being chilly that night. I still remember that. The temperature of her hand left an impression on mine that seemed to remain for years. We walked a few yards more until she stopped at a small ditch with a thin stream at the bottom. She smiled at me before sliding down to the edge of the stream. I paused before following. At the bottom, she caught my arm and stopped me from going face first into the creek. She laughed and I laughed back. "Look," she said, pointing in the creek. I scanned the surface of the dark water, unsure of what she was pointing at. "Tadpoles," she said with excitement. I looked again, and in the moon's reflection, I saw tiny black dots swimming near the edge of the creek. "They'll grow legs soon," she said. "That's what I learned in school. Do you go to school?" I shook my head. "Yeah, I'm not right now, but my dad said I can go back soon, when we leave the woods." Despite not knowing her well, the thought of her leaving made my chest hurt. "Jamie!" cried Monty from somewhere in the woods. "I gotta go," she said softly. "Come visit me again. Just whistle 3 times, and I'll come find you in the woods." She climbed up the ditch and waved before disappearing. I only went to visit her on the nights my mom was exhausted. Sometimes Jamie was already in bed when I arrived. We only saw each other once every couple of weeks, but the times we saw each other made up for all the other time I was away that I wanted to see her. Seeing her was like seeing sunshine after weeks of rain. On these late night meetings, Jamie told me all about her life out of the woods, the friends she had back in her hometown, the restaurants she'd missed, the afternoon she spent at their local library reading whichever book had the coolest cover. "Have you ever read The Boxcar Children?" she asked me one night. I shook my head. My mom had a small collection of books, and most were too long for me to be interested in. The only 3 I had read from her collection were one about local wildlife and an old cookbook with faded letters. "Whenever I leave, you can visit me, and I'll let you borrow it," she said while hitting tall blades of grass with a stick. "I have the whole collection. Oh, and we can go see the movies. I love going to the movies. I used to go all the time with my mom and dad before they broke up." "Broke up?" I asked. "Yeah, it's like when adults decide they don't like each other anymore, so they stop living together." She knew so much more than me about movies, books, the world, everything. "You've really lived out here your whole life, Spider-Man?" she asked. "Yeah, I think so," I said. "That's cool. You're like this guy in this movie I like called Tarzan. Except you weren't raised by gorillas, right?" She laughed. We found a clearing and sat in the cool grass. Fireflies flew around the tall grass like embers. We looked at each other, and she smiled, and I smiled back. She picked at the grass to her side, randomly glancing at me. "Why do you wear a mask?" she asked, not looking up at me. I knew it would come eventually, though I liked how long she'd gone before asking. "My mom says something bad will happen," I said, wondering if I should have come up with a cooler reason. She picked at the grass a few more seconds before standing up and dusting her hands. "Works for me," she said before offering her hand to help me up. And as we stood in the moonlight, I knew there was no way my face was nearly as nice as hers. We'd met each other every few weeks for around a year without either of us getting caught, though I got the feeling her dad wouldn't care as much as my mom would. One night when I came back, my mom was waiting in the yard, staring into the woods. She spotted me, and her eyes grew wide with anger. "Where the hell were you?" she cried, moving towards me like an angry bull. She grabbed me by the shoulders and tried to look in my eyes, but I refused to meet them. "Just out for a walk," I said. "You're meeting that girl, weren't you?" she asked. "You know we can't trust them." I pulled away from my mom, and she stepped back, surprised. "What's wrong with you?" she asked. "She's my friend," I said. "My only friend." "I thought I was your friend," she returned, her voice dropping. I paused. "Friends don't keep secrets from each other. You don't tell me anything." Mom looked at the ground. I could see the thoughts racing through her head. She was considering something. "Why do we have to stay here?" I asked. "Why can't I have friends? Why can't I go to school? Why do I have to wear a mask? Mom bit her lip, and her eyes met mine. They were red and ready to break with tears. I waited for an answer, hoping she'd finally decide to share something with me. She gripped her fists, then released them. She sighed and started back to the cabin, leaving me where I was standing. Keep playing with her if you want, she said. Just keep your mask on. Another year or so passed. I was still frustrated with my mom for not sharing more information with me, but I was happy I didn't have to sneak out to meet Jamie. We even started meeting in the daylight, making it much easier to explore the woods together. I showed her all the things I'd learned over the years about how to identify poisonous plants, how to find your way home if you got lost, and how to track animals. Wow, you know a lot about the woods, she said. Why didn't you ever tell me? I shrugged. Will you teach me how to shoot a bow and arrow, she asked. Mom had just taught me, so I wasn't sure how well I could teach her. However, the pleas in her eyes kept me from saying no. We found a spot near a clearing in the woods where my mom would often hunt for quails. We ducked behind a log, and I set up a bow and arrow on top of it. A small flock of quail bobbed in and out of the tall grass. I picked a larger one closer to us than the rest and aimed the arrow just as my mom had taught me. The quail bobbed again, and I took a deep breath before letting the arrow go. The flock flew into the air, leaving the arrow on the ground, pointed towards the sky. We walked to the clearing and found the quail struck through its chest in the arrow. That was amazing, she cried. I want to try. It was the first animal I'd ever killed on my own, and I loved that Jamie was here to see it. It made me realize that I wanted her there for all of the big moments in my life. We went back to the log with my quail and hid. An hour or so passed before the flock returned and started picking at seeds and insects on the ground. I handed Jamie the bow and arrow. What do I do? She asked, holding the bow and arrow at her sides. You have to show me, silly. I awkwardly moved towards her and placed my arms around her shoulders. I lifted her arm with the arrow, then the one with the bow. I positioned them in the right spots slowly. Her hair smelled like sweat and dirt, but I liked it. You have to take aim and take a breath before shooting, I said. You need to make sure you're completely relaxing, and taking a breath helps. Okay, she said. How far do I pull the string back? I gulped before putting my hand over hers. She breathed quickly as I scared her, but quickly settled into my arms. I cupped my hand around hers and pulled the string back. She looked at me and smiled. I think I got it, she said. I moved away as I noticed my heart beating harder than it should have had. She aimed the arrow and took a breath. She let it go, and the flock flew away. We both watched the arrow for a moment and saw it move. We ran to it and saw the quail shot in the side. I pulled the arrow out, and the tiny bird struggled to move away from us. Oh no, she said. I could see her starting to cry. It's okay, I said, picking up the quail and holding it between us. Do you think we can help? Before she could finish her thought, I twisted the bird's neck, and it went limp. I held it to him, and she stared at him wide-eyed. I cocked my head at her, but she looked away. It's okay, you can keep it, she said. We spent the rest of that day at a clearing close to her campsite. She poked at rocks with her pocket knife and stared at the forest, not saying anything. I was about to ask her what was wrong when she dropped her head and began sobbing. What's wrong? I asked. She looked back up, then to me. I want to go home. I dropped my head. I know my dad is hiding me from my mom, she said. He picked me up from school one day and told me we were going on a fun trip and that we'd go home soon. I believed him for a long time, but I'm not a stupid kid anymore. I miss my mom. I miss my old friends. I know she didn't mean to make me feel bad, but hearing it all hurt. I thought she was happy out here with me, that all we needed was each other. I want to leave, she said, and I want you to go with me. I sat back, What? I can't. I can't leave. She pursed her lips and set her head on her knees. Why do you wear that mask? I have to. Because your mom says. I paused, then nodded. Your mom's lying, just like my dad is. I bet you $1 million nothing will happen if you take off your mask right now. She moved her hand towards me and gripped the neck of the mask. I pulled back and she let go. She paused and tried again. And this time I allowed her to untie the twine. Everything seemed to move in slow motion as she gently pulled upwards on the mask, careful to avoid yanking too hard around my nose and eyes. Everything went black as the last bit of the mask traveled up my face. But then, Jamie's smiling face greeted me with the sun behind it. We stared at each other for several moments. See? Nothing, she said. And you don't have any hideous scars or anything. Really? I asked. She shook her head, then leaned in, kissing me on the lips. My eyes widened in surprise for a moment, but I quickly relaxed as it felt right. Perfect. She pulled away and smiled again. My smile was so big, my cheeks started to hurt. Let's leave. Tonight, she said. Tonight? She nodded. I can grab food and stuff to last us a while. And you can use your forced knowledge to lead us back to the road. Some adults will have to pick up some kids they see on the side of the road. I'll tell them where my mom lives and we can go back there. Your mom would let me stay, I asked. She nodded. Of course. She stood up and offered her hand to me. I took it and pulled myself up. Meet me here when the moon is in the center of the sky, she said. 1,000 thoughts went through my mind as I stood there, holding Jamie's hand. I wondered if this was really a good idea, if my mom would be okay without me, if I was ready to leave the woods, but I knew I could do all of it as long as I was with Jamie. I nodded. She started out of the clearing with me a few feet behind her. She paused, causing me to stop. She stood still for several seconds with her arms at her sides, the pocket knife in her hand shaking. Jamie, I asked, are you okay? She turned to me with wide eyes and her mouth clenched. Jamie? I moved towards her, but she lifted the knife. I stood frozen as she moved it towards her head, holding it a few inches from her cheek. She stuck the knife deep in her face and I screamed. She pulled against the handle, dragging the blade along her face. I ran to stop her, but a kick to my stomach sent me to the ground. Jamie continued doing that to her face, dragging it along her forehead and down to her ears. I leapt up to stop her again, but again and again, she managed to keep me away while continuing to do that to her flesh. Jamie, cried a voice from the woods. Monty distracted me for a moment as he came running into the clearing from behind me. I heard a scream, he said while approaching, and noticed the knife in Jamie's face and the blood running down her neck. Jamie, he cried. He ran quickly towards her, glancing at me along the way. He paused a few feet behind me, and I stood between the two of them as the horrible sounds of Jamie's knife still working down her face filled my ears and made my legs immobile. Monty stared blank-faced at me for a moment, then dug into his pocket without looking down. He pulled out a much larger knife than Jamie's and stuck it into his own cheek, starting to cut along the same pattern she had. I clocked the silence from behind me and turned. I didn't want to see what Jamie had done, but I couldn't stop myself. My brain wanted to leave as quickly as I could, but something buried deep told me to look. I looked upon a bloody mess of musculature. Her eyelids were still there, though she didn't blink. Her nose was gone, as were her lips, revealing 2 rows of small teeth. The sounds of Monty continuing to slice sounded behind me as my eyes traveled down Jamie's body. At her side, I saw what was left of her face. She lifted her arm and held it to me. It looked like I wanted to scream but couldn't. Instead, I ran as fast as I could back to the cabin, pulling my mask back over my face along the way. Mom was peeling the husk from some corn when I ran into the yard. I stumbled to the ground, and she ran over. The inside of my mask was soaked with tears, and I was having trouble breathing in. "Nestor, what's wrong?" she asked, kneeling in front of me. Her fingers drifted to the untied twine at the bottom of my neck. "Oh no," she said. Did she see your face?" "They're still alive," I said. "We can take them out of the woods." "It's too late for them, son. I'm sorry." I cried violently for another few moments, then looked at my mom. "When you said something bad would happen if someone saw my face, you didn't mean something bad would happen to me, did you?" I sat in the kitchen while Mom brought me a glass of cool water. I could tell she was stalling, but I didn't care. Everything was wrong, and nothing she said would make it better. She sat in front of me and grabbed my hand. "I didn't want to tell you. I hoped I would never have to." She looked from side to side, then at me. In the town I grew up in, this small place on the other side of the woods, there were stories of things in the forest. Things that only showed themselves when they wanted to be seen. Spirits, ghosts, monsters. Natives had a name for this particular brand of spirits that I can't remember. She continued. Us in town always just called them face stealers. My heart stopped beating for a moment. Folks said, if you looked at the faces, they would take yours. All us kids figured they were just stories meant to keep us from wandering too far into the woods. That's what adults do, right? Tell kids fibs to keep them from getting hurt? That's what I learned to do, Nestor. And I'm wondering if it was right. I'm wondering if I should have just told you this stuff from the beginning. She sighed. I wanted to say something, but my mind couldn't find the words. I went most of my life believing that there was no such thing as magic and things were only the way they were, Mom said before pausing to look at me. One day, I was walking in the woods, just trying to clear my head. I might have wandered farther than I should have, but I grew up around the trees. I knew how to find my way back. As I was fixing to turn around, I noticed a man a few yards away from me, off the trail. I didn't think nothing of it at first. Figured he was out hunting or something like that. But when he turned to me, his face was missing. Cut clean off. Took everything except his teeth and ears. My hands started to shake. I didn't want to believe anything she was saying, but the image of Jamie's skinless face refused to leave my head. I started walking backwards, thinking this man must have lost his mind. But it occurred to me that maybe all those stories I thought were bullshit actually had some truth to them. She looked at me, then away. It was the first time I'd ever heard her curse. I kept moving away from the man when I saw this small body facing away from me, a few yards away, off the trail. A kid, no older than 2 or 3, completely unclothed in the woods by themselves. I walked towards them, thinking they might be in danger from the man. Then I saw it. A clump of skin on the ground in a pile like some fucked up anthill. The holes for his eyes were the only thing I saw before turning away. I didn't know what to do. I thought about just leaving you out there, but then you started to cry. A painful cry that broke my heart. I couldn't have kids on my own, but she swallowed her saliva. I wrapped my outside shirt over your head and picked you up. And when you wrapped your tiny arms around my neck, I knew that I had to protect you, so I just kept walking deeper and deeper into the woods, not knowing what to do, but hoping I'd figure it out along the way. She answered the first question I had without me having to say anything. I don't know who left you there or why, she said. I wondered if your real parents would ever come looking for you. And maybe that's partly why I wanted us to stay hidden as we could. Her eyes drifted to me. There was a long, heavy silence. Nestor, she said. I don't want to ask, son, but I think I have to. When your friend did what she did you like it? Of course I didn't like it. I thought as I wandered back through the woods. I didn't have time to examine my emotions at the time, though. I thought I was terrified, but had I confused excitement for terror? The sun was beginning to set when I made it to the spot where Jamie and Monty lay. They were both on their backs, their bodies still against the bright green grass. I warily approached, not wanting to see what had become of their faces, but unable to stop myself. I stopped just shy of their bodies and noticed something on the ground. A small mound of pink flesh stared back at me, and I knew it was her face. I didn't move for a few moments, my stomach turning at the idea of what her face might look like detached from her body. Still, I moved towards it, seeing a few insects had begun picking away at the flesh. I picked it up, dusting these small creatures away while feeling the softness of the flesh between my fingers. As the stinky blood coated my palms, I felt the side of my mouth begin to curl into a smile. I gasped and dropped Jamie's face before running away from the scene, wiping the blood from my hands onto my pants. I sat in my room staring at the wall for a long time. My body still buzzed from the feeling of Jamie's face between my fingers. The fear and sickness had all disappeared, instead replaced with an elation I'd never experienced. My body felt light, and the constant fear and anxiety that usually filled my brain had gone away. I felt confident and more intelligent, though it seemed impossible at the time. I sat with the feeling, not wanting it to leave. However, when it did, I felt worse than I ever had. A dark cloud seemed to surround my head as my body felt heavy and bound to the space around me. The realization that I would never see my best friend again came rushing into me, and the guilt of knowing I had caused her death made me wish I were the one lying lifeless in the grass instead of her. I cried for the next few hours until it felt like I had no tears left. My mom had come by to check on me several times, but avoided coming into my room. "Just let me know if you need something, okay?" she asked once. I heard her move to her room and shut the door. She never closed her room at night before that day. I could tell there was something different about her, and it became more evident over the next few days. She no longer walked around the house like an authority figure, but more like someone trying to avoid eye contact with a mean dog. She never brought up the incident again, and I was thankful for it. The guilt of killing Jamie never went away, though neither did the remembrance of that ecstasy I experienced afterwards. It created a temptation in me to go out and find someone else to whom I could show my face to. It became a regular craving. Usually, it was more like one might crave sugar after going a long time without any. But some nights, it was almost comparable to starvation. It became so bad that one day, I saw my mom working outside, busy and distracted with chores. I approached from behind and started removing my mask without thinking. My mom heard me approach and spun around, dropping the garden hose she'd been using. The look of fear in her face, the woman who'd ensured my survival, who'd loved me despite knowing I was a monster. Seeing her that terrified of me, it almost hurt worse than Jamie. Mom slept with a chair against her door that night and for most nights after. While she was sleeping one night, I snuck into her craft room, spotting a large needle she used on leather. I grabbed it, taking a thick roll of twine as well. Jamie's face flashed in my mind. First, her face the first time I'd met her, followed by the last time. I knew it was horrible, but my emotions and my brain weren't matching. And at the time, I felt like my brain was right. If the cravings weren't going to stop, then I needed to prevent my mask from ever coming off again. I took the needle and the twine and held them to my neck for a moment before taking a deep breath. The needle punctured my skin, then the mask leather. I cringed as the twine slid through my flesh and felt every centimeter of its rough edges scraping the inside of my skin. Lines of crimson fell from every puncture in my neck. The harsh stinging I'd felt when I first punctured my skin had become a dull pain. For the first time in my life, the mask felt warm and comforting. I breathed in its leathery smell before lying back on my bed. Thankful I'd never hurt anyone like I'd hurt Jamie. My bed is much more comfortable these days. I invested in a weighted blanket and a goose down pillow, and you truly can tell the difference. In a month, it'll be 10 years since I left the woods. Mom died a year prior, and being out there by myself, well, it was lonelier than I can describe, though on some nights I would give a lot of money for the peace and quiet of the woods. My apartment overlooks a bustling downtown area, and while the view is amazing, the noise of the city can be a bit overwhelming at times. Thank God for the noise-canceling headphones my ex-girlfriend gifted me for Christmas last year. Though it's my day off, I decided to do some cleaning. I never got around to hiring a new cleaner, and the place has become a bit of a sty. I go to the bathroom and look in the mirror for a moment, seeing my night mask staring back at me. It's more lucid than any of the masks I had been growing up, but thick enough to prevent me from seeing my actual face. This mask is milky white and made of thin plastic. It only covers my face, leaving my hair, eyes, and neck visible. The scars where I'd sewn that old mask on became a pale white over the years. No one ever asked about them. There were only a few people who've ever seen me with my shirt off. Lining the bathroom counter are several other masks. Ones I made myself from materials I've collected over the years. I've been perfecting them since leaving the woods. I was able to get away with crude masks for a while, using the excuse of having bad scarring, but I realized how much better it was to get close to someone before doing what I had to do. And people want something they can see. Eyes that react to them. Lips that move. Cheeks that wrinkle when smiling. I think I've almost got my masks perfect. They contour to every crease of my face and match my skin color perfectly. Only sometimes will someone notice something off about my face. Maybe they spot a plasticky sheen to the synthetic skin or see makeup lines around my lips or eyes. They only make a look of concern and continue about their day, wondering if what they saw was only their imagination. I decide to clean my room first, starting with the mess of clothes in the closet. Before getting started though, I decide to reminisce and drag out the leather box near the back corner of the closet. I place it on my bed and pull the flap open. A smile climbs up on my cheeks. I've managed to preserve most of them, with the latest ones being those of my ex-girlfriend and the cleaners. There are 23 in total, and I have plans for several more. So I'm probably going to need to find a better storage system. Seeing all the empty eye sockets and jagged edges of the faces always makes me feel a slight amount of the elation I felt upon taking them. It also makes me sad though. Sad that it didn't go back for her face before the forest took it. 1. House on fire. Disputes between neighbors are common. Property boundaries, noise complaints, shared fences, pets, parking spaces, or different lifestyles. All of these things together can create the perfect storm for conflict, and sometimes the conflict can escalate. When I used to live in my upstairs apartment, I liked to listen to music, and it wasn't rare to get a broom or two banging under my floor, a wordless request to quiet down. And you know what I'd do? I'd be a respectful neighbor and quiet down. That's called conflict resolution. But many people don't have the capacity to resolve conflicts peacefully, especially when the request is unreasonable or out of your control. What might begin as a simple misunderstanding can quickly turn into rage, anger, and sometimes violence. A post from 6 years ago does a great job of showcasing what can happen when neighborhood conflict turns ugly. The user, Another Guilty Witness, writes, "Karen threatens to get me arrested for gardening my garden." The title says it all. Because the groundhog had no shadow, spring came early, so I had decided to weed the garden strip that borders mine and Karen's property. There's a fence between the garden and her house. While doing so, I get rid of some of my daylilies that are on my property. I finish, return to my house, and continue my day, until I hear a shriek from the side of my house. I rush over because I'm scared someone got hurt, and Karen, who just got home from work, asked me why I got rid of her lilies. I say that they were my lilies and that I was making space for tomatoes, cucumbers, and carrots. She then calls the police because I had destroyed her property. The police come and basically tell her to go inside and shut up, because it's pretty clear whose flowers they were. Simple enough. Property lines got confused, and now Karen thinks that her precious daylilies have been stolen from her. But overall, it doesn't seem like a big deal. The post is nothing to write home about, just a normal interaction with an entitled, confused neighbor. In fact, I'd call it pedestrian. It does suck that Karen doesn't have her lilies anymore, but genuinely, who cares? Well, Karen cares. A lot more than anyone realized, apparently. And what she does next is nothing short of terrifying. OP then creates a new post to tell us what happened later that night, after their first confrontation. This is an update to a previous post of mine, but I feel like this is big enough to warrant its own post. In my previous post, I explained that a woman flipped out over the fact that I had taken daylilies out of my garden in preparation for some vegetables and such I was going to plant. In the comments, some had suggested that I put a camera facing the garden in case Karen decides that the tomatoes look like they're on her side of the property line. My aunt, who's not entitled, was switching from Arlo to Ring Home Security, so she sent me those. They arrived the morning of the fire, so no video. That aside, I did not expect Karen to do this. Yesterday, Karen got mega drunk, like multiple cases of beer drunk. I don't know what she was drinking, but she had obviously had a lot. And this put her anger over the edge about the loss of my lilies. She went, with wood and fire starter, to my neighbor's house, the one on the opposite side of her house than mine, and lit their bins on fire. This spread to their porch, and their entire home was alight. I'm a light sleeper, and living in a cul-de-sac. Was woken up by the orange haze floating through my windows. I called 911, the whole shebang, witness report and everything. And as I went out with the 911 operator on the phone, this shitbag gives a confession. After a while, and as the fire department shows up, she realizes her mistakes. 1, she lit a house on fire, and 2, she lit the wrong house on fire. She's being charged with arson and the like, and everyone got out. There's a mother, father, and 2 kids who are high schoolers. It still feels surreal. A commenter then asks if she had intended to light his house on fire, and OP replies, yes, she meant to set mine on fire. Her eyes went giant when she realized her mistake. Took a good 5 minutes after she told me the story of how she lit my house on fire. What started as a petty disagreement over flowers spiraled into a near tragedy. But thankfully, no one was injured, but an innocent family is now homeless because of Karen's reckless stupidity. It goes to show, you never really know who might be living next door and what they're truly capable of. Slugs. When I was a kid, I remember sitting in my living room and flipping through the channels at night when I came across a show that I had no business watching. That show was the original Fear Factor hosted by Joe Rogan. It was a game show where contestants would compete for a cash prize, and the premise was very simple. Contestants, before coming on, would submit their fears to the show, which they would then have to confront during the course of the game. And if they successfully overcame all their fears, oftentimes by completing disgusting, often terrifying challenges, they'd go on to win the prize. And some of the most disgusting and disturbing challenges were ones involving food. ice cream covered in snot and vomit, blended up rats, cow eyeball juice, but that's just a game show. What if it happened in real life? How would you react? Unfortunately for user rainbow_drizzle, things were about to get nasty. She writes, I found out my partner has been putting slugs in my food. I don't know how to forgive him. I, 22 female, have been with my partner 24 male for 4 years now. I have never known him to do anything like this, but I noticed he started acting a little strange around a month, maybe a month and a half ago. He started putting fruit on the floor in the garden, and I thought it was a bit weird, but he said he was feeding the mice family that have nested in our shed, so I thought it was sweet and helped him do so. Anyways, he started being really nice to me around 2 weeks ago and was making me food, baking me cakes and stuff, which he never usually cooks, so I was so happy he found a hobby. I did notice, sometimes, I felt sick and dizzy after eating, and I just put it down to lack of sleep/hormones. Anyways, a friend of my partner's came into my work today. I work in a cafe, and said he needed to speak to me when I was free. I was free as there wasn't any customers at the time. He told me that my partner has been collecting slugs from the garden on fruit he has been putting out there and putting them in my food, blending them up. He even sent this friend of his pictures of a bag of slugs he had collected and the picture of blended slugs. I feel really sick to my stomach. I don't understand why he would do this. This is so out of character of him. I asked him why he was doing it, and he accused me of snooping through his messages, which I would never do, and got so angry at me for not being able to take a joke. I feel disgusting. I love him to pieces, but I just don't understand his way of thinking just now. Am I overreacting? I don't know what to do. I feel lost. Update. I went to urgent care last night/early hours of morning and waited and was finally seen around 6 a.m.-ish. I had some tests and I have a high level of metaldehyde in my blood. I was kept in for monitoring, and I have some ulcers in my stomach. I was aware of this anyways, as I was hospitalized about 2 months ago for a burst ulcer. I originally thought it was stress, but they now say it could be because of the poisoning. I could have an infection of some kind as my temperature is high, but they haven't found anything that could be causing that yet. They have checked my heart and it's fine. I'm due to have heart surgery this year though, and they're delaying it due to ulcers and infections and the fact I keep getting sick, which is okay. I have an appointment to see my cardiologist on the 20th of April. I contacted the police and wrote a statement and was asked some questions. Anyone who knows me in real life, please don't post mine or my partner's name, as the police said it would destroy the investigation. Not the exact words they used, but I am unsure. I was in a daze. My ex refused to say anything to the police or to me. However, he did say he would speak to his friend and only him. He then spoke to me. I was not alone. I was with a friend and his friend too. He confessed to doing random experience on me /tests starting a few months after we moved in together. It started with spitting on my toast, and then the week later, he replaced my medicine, beta blockers, with salt, emptied capsules. I want to add he was my medication holder, as I have a history of S-word attempts, so he handled my meds and gave them to me, and that's when he thought it would be funny. He also admitted to these things, swapping my Linda McCartney vegetarian sausages with real meat. I have IBS and struggle to digest meat, so became a vegetarian. He also replaced my corn nuggets with his real ones. One of my pet giant African land snails went missing in the summer, and I assumed it escaped since I left the lid open on their box, but he said it had died, so we scraped it out and put it in my curry. I vaguely remember the day he did this, as he laughed whenever I went to eat the curry, and I got really paranoid, so I put it in the kitchen and stormed off. He then brought it upstairs and told me to taste it, and I did. And I realized he added loads of chili, and he said he was laughing because he put chili powder in it and too much came out. Now I think he must have put the chili in to cover the fact he put my snail in there. He also said he rubbed my toothbrush on the toilet, but then washed it as he thought that was too far. I feel like this is all a dream. It just seems too dramatic to feel real. I am unsure what is happening on the legal front. He says he doesn't know why he did this and that he loves me truly and that he felt compelled to do it, which I understand as I suffer from OCD and get compulsions/impulsions, and that he really loves taking care of me and he feels it's his purpose and he didn't mean to cause serious harm. He promises he never did any of this to our animals. I think he could just be stressed as I have mental health issues that could have caused something in him to break from too much stress. I am really sad and sorry for those who I caused concern. What happened to OP is terrifying. But sadly, it isn't uncommon for people to abuse their partners in sick, twisted ways. And we actually have a similar story on the next entry. Domestic violence. 10 months ago, an account called Throwaway53665 posed just such a question to Reddit. It's titled, "How did physical abuse start for you?" My partner, male 36, shoved me, female 29, for the first time today. He started to get verbally aggressive during an argument. When he starts yelling at me and mocking me, I try to get some space for a few hours. I generally have never walked out during arguments with previous partners. However, when he starts getting disrespectful and the conversation is not productive, I feel so overwhelmed that I don't know what else to do but try to get away. I try to tell him that I need some time to myself. He usually yells things like, "You're just gonna do the running away thing again. Is this really all this means to you?" Like other times before, he followed me and ran in between me and the doorway, attempting to block my exit. There's been many other times of him physically preventing me from leaving like this, also standing behind my car, for example. But then, for the first time, he shoved me away. Hard. I was appalled. He later apologized and said it was because I stepped on his foot and it was an accident. He says he would never hurt me, but I'm not sure if I should believe him. It seems plausible that I could have stepped on his foot without realizing it. I did have winter boots on and he had bare feet, so I do feel bad since that must have really hurt. Even then, however, I wonder if that warrants such a strong reaction like shoving someone to the point of almost knocking them over. It's been easier to dismiss many of the emotional abuse signs. I question if I'm somehow part of contributing to this dynamic. I think about how he is so wonderful most of the time. There is always some sort of plausible reason for his reactions/emotional outbursts that has kept me hanging on. I told myself I would definitely leave if it ever escalated to physical abuse, but now I'm even questioning myself about that. Commenters were quick to provide their own stories. Harsh, dirty realities for many suffering from domestic violence. A comment by NTA Black Wolf shows what could happen if the original poster weren't to take action. It started with calling me names, ranting and raving for hours, then pushing me and breaking some of my things, then choking me. Only once. This time I got away and called the police and he ran away. After pushing and leaving bruises one day, he got up and hit me. He headbutted me and made my nose bleed. Literally found your post searching for warning signs about abuse turning to murder. I never thought any of these things would happen. Now the emotional and verbal abuse has become normalized. I've started having reactive abuse, yelling and throwing things. He has destroyed my clothes and threw something on my head, causing it to bleed. I keep thinking it'll get better. On a wait list for therapy. Just know this behavior isn't normal to all men. There are 44 comments on the original post. Some of them offer their own experiences. Others outline what signs to look out for, checklists for abusive partners, and resources for how to escape. A terrible reality for many people all over the world. The post serves as a reminder that this kind of violence happens every day, and that if your partner is shoving, hitting, or throwing things at you, or poisoning you with slugs, they are abusing you. Simple as that. Noises at night. Everyone gets scared when things go bump in the night. Creaking doors, constricting pipes, wind banging against the side of your home. All of these things can give you a good scare. But nothing compares to this next Redditor story. User RedWantsBlue80 writes, I use an app called Sleep as Android to improve my sleep. One of the features is that it records your nighttime noises, snoring, sleep talk, cover ruffles, coughing, etc. I've been using the app since October 1st of 2013. I've never caught anything other than sounds created by me changing positions or coughing or something like that. Although I've been told several times I talk in my sleep by other people. On December 30th, at 2:04 a.m., I caught something very weird. To set up, this night I was sleeping in my bed. My 3-year-old was with me that night as he is scared of the dark. It was just the two of us in the whole house. The next night, I decided to go through and delete my recordings and saw this particular recording. In it, you can hear some clicks that start to get louder over the course of the recording. Eventually, you can hear me say, "What are you doing?" And immediately after, there's a deep voice that says, "Nothing." The clicks become very loud at that point, and at the very end of the recording, you hear the same voice say, "That's them, I think." I am pretty creeped out by this. I don't remember being awake that night. The only plausible explanation is that I answered my own sleep talking, but the voice doesn't even sound like me or something I could emulate. It definitely doesn't sound like a voice my preschooler could emulate either. I have no idea what the clicks could be. I keep a fan going at night for white noise, but the clicks sound like they're coming from right near my phone, which is placed right by me on my bedside table. I want to say that I've picked up the clicks a few times on recordings before, but deleted them thinking it was nothing. This is the first time I've ever heard anything though. And for everyone skeptical about this story, here is the original audio recording that accompanied the post.
What are you doing? Okay. That's right.
Genuinely, I thought this post at first was an exaggeration, but after hearing the voice on that recording, well, I'm just glad she's safe from whatever that was. Tier 2. The Machete Man. Therapists are some of the most crucial service workers that exist today. The prevalence of mental health issues, psychological disorders, trauma, and the pressures of everyday life have made therapy not just helpful, it's crucial. But some patients clearly need more help than others. Those especially damaged or demented patients who wrestle with dark thoughts or complete delusion can be very dangerous if left untreated. But there are dangers that come with treating them too. Our next user, Rays R. Bays, responds to an Ask Reddit thread with their own story of treating a very difficult patient. Therapist in training and my tutor, who is a childhood abuse and trauma specialist, tells some horror stories. The one that stood out for this question was a guy in his mid-40s who had lived most of his life with extreme paranoia that his parents were sending people to get information from him to blackmail him with. This guy was extremely unstable and was legally obligated to go to therapy after committing some petty theft because he believed his parents were tracking his money. Anyway, he'd been going for about 6 weeks, and he began to talk about a plan for the future. He was kind of vague, but said he had worked out a way to break free from his childhood and move forward. My tutor was apprehensive but hopeful. He had been making good progress in the previous sessions. Fast forward a week and this guy's back again. He's noticeably agitated and carrying a large sports bag. My tutor remarks that she's pleased to see him and likes his new bag. He breaks down. He confesses that he has a machete in the bag and had planned to kill everyone from his old life, starting with his therapist, so he could be free from his past, but she was very nice and would be hard to kill. My tutor politely excused herself and called the police. The guy was very compliant. He'd pretty much given up at that point, but the police confirmed he did indeed have a large machete in his bag, and his car was full of bin bags. She said that was the only time she felt she was close to dying, and says the moral of the story is to treat all your clients well because you never know who's plotting your murder. My father tried to kill me. As children, we rely on our parents to take care of us. That's their role. They are our protectors. They keep a roof over our heads, food in our bellies, and lead us into adulthood with a gentle, firm direction. But sometimes, parents end up more like the villains of our story than our heroes. User 99muses writes, I think my father tried to kill me when I was younger. My father and I have never gotten along. Maybe when I was a baby, but I know I was a disappointment. Being born a female, and he comes from a very hierarchical, conservative, patriarchal family. He was literally the precious son that my grandparents had 4 daughters until they had him. It's been an accepted fact with my immediate family that my father dislikes me with no apparent or obvious reason. As I grow older, I think that maybe it's because he felt he did everything he was supposed to do in his life, but it's not enough for him, or it wasn't right for him to be happy, and as a result, I was his punching bag. Often, literally. I grew up in an Asian household where physical discipline was normal. It was rarely severe or the kind that left marks, but it was normal and I'm fine with it. But I've always had this memory that, until very recently, I thought was just a crazy dream I had until I talked to my sister, and she remembers it, meaning it really did happen. In my dream/memory, my father was very angry. He's very short-tempered and rarely in a good mood, and is prone to shouting and physical disciplining. But this time, I don't even remember what I had done. But I remember he was very angry. I wasn't a rebellious teenager at all, very soft-spoken and quiet and obedient. Although maybe not studious enough for my father, despite getting good grades, I'm not sure. But this day I remember because he was shouting and he pushed my head down and wrapped his hands around my throat and started to choke me. I remember barely even struggling, but everything eventually going dark. Apparently my sister had walked in and started screaming at him when she saw what was happening, and he finally let go. But then I had fainted. I always thought this was just a dream. I thought the worst he had ever done was bash my head repeatedly against the glass dinner table when he thought I was stupid for using a CD player to figure out what songs were on a CD my friend had given me. I'm shockingly technologically inept for my generation. And the more I think about it, maybe it wasn't the intention, but I feel like he tried to kill me. I get very jealous when I see fathers who care for their daughters, who cherish them and has so much love for them in their eyes. My mother is wonderful. I'm not even sure if she knows this happened. Recently, I was seeing someone, and I finally opened up to him after he pressed me a lot to tell him what happened with my father. I haven't been resistant to talking about the coldness of my father in my relationship, but I've always stayed vague with the details and the extent. But the guy I was seeing didn't really say anything after I told him and fell asleep soon after. It made me feel like I was blowing things out of proportion. And now things are over with him, and my secret is gone with him, and I have no one to confide in about it. I know I should be grateful. My father was there in my life, and he contributed to the privilege that I've grown up with, but when I introduced my ex-boyfriend to my family, he was so excited and happy and led him away and spent time with him like he's never even tried to with me. Not even when I was a little girl, desperate for his love. So much that I tried to be a boy. I tried to learn about cars and baseball and all the things he loved. I tried to dress like a boy and pushed myself to enjoy more boyish activities. But it was never enough for him. And it makes me feel like I'm not enough. Spontaneous age. Curiosity is a funny thing. It's one of the core characteristics of our humanity. It's what encourages us to open doors we were told to leave closed, build cities, or explore the stars. But as the old adage goes, curiosity killed the cat. 16 years ago, a user named Spontaneous H made a now infamous post to r/IMA titled, "I did H yesterday. I'm not a drug user and have never done anything besides pot back when I was a teen. Ask me anything." This is a little long. I have never been a drug user. I drink once in a while and smoked pot years ago back when I was a teen in high school a few times, and that's it. I'm 24 now, have a master's and a well-paying full-time job. Yesterday, I was walking through Washington Square Park, where I pass every day, and there are always people there looking to sell drugs. They usually don't solicit drugs unless you stop to stand around near one of them for some reason, or look like you're looking for something. Yesterday, I happened to stop by a row of benches to check some messages on my phone when a dealer on the bench to my right asked me if I need anything. My life has been pretty boring the last few years, and I feel like I haven't really lived, taken any risks, or done anything crazy, so I figured, what the hell? Maybe I'll buy some pot. It's been a while. I said yeah, and after asking me several times if I'm a cop, he gives me his number and tells me to meet him at a fast food place several blocks away, and he will hook me up. I say alright and nervously check to make sure I have cash and go meet this shady looking dude. We sit down and, after hounding me asking me if I'm a cop, he asked what I need. I tell him I just want a dime bag, and he says something like, "Nah, sorry man, I only sell half ounces. You can take that and I've got some Coke and H." At this point, I didn't want to buy half an ounce of pot. I probably never smoked more than an eighth in my life, but then I started considering his last word. H. I've heard so much about it, and how crazy addictive it is, and seen it in the movies and TV. I'm thinking The Wire here, one of my favorite shows, and it really started to intrigue me. I've always wondered what it would be like to do H. Out of nowhere, I say I'll take the H and we do the deal there. I give him the cash under the table, and he slides me a small order of fries with a little stamped wax baggie in it. Then he tells me to let him leave first. I put it in my pocket, then nervously race home, my heart racing. I cannot believe what I just did. I held onto that bag in my pocket, palms sweating the whole ride home. When I get home, I open the bag and dump some golden flakes and powder on my glass coffee table. At this point, I don't even know what to do. I know you can snort H, but it looked all flaky, so I try to remember how they did it in the movies, but they always seem to inject it in film. So I start Googling how to snort H like an idiot and do a little research on the stuff and how much to take. And then he gets into the nitty gritty on what he did to ingest it. But if you'd like to see the full reading, you have to go to the Patreon, $5 a month. You get uncensored videos, early access videos, and extra content. So please consider that, and I will just resume the story when it's YouTube appropriate. I waited, and in a few minutes, I had the most pleasurable feeling of pure relaxation and bliss wash over me. I just sat there, and everything felt amazing. I nodded off, and it was great. I had the TV on, but wasn't paying attention. I must have sat around for 4 hours doing nothing, but I felt total pleasure. And then he gets into some more, once again, nitty-gritty descriptions, so that'll be on the Patreon, and I'll just resume where it's YouTube appropriate again. I was blown away by the power of this stuff, and just how incredible it felt. I never understood why people did drugs before, and got so hooked on them, but now I see why. I have the urge to do it again, but I will resist and not do it, at least not for a long time. I understand the addiction potential and how someone could easily tear apart their lives with this stuff. H is pure powdered pleasure. I actually feel proud of myself for having the balls to do something this crazy, and I feel like it was a valuable life experience and my window into another world and part of society. I will never forget the day I did H. Now, ask me anything. Many of the commenters came forward with their own stories, urging the poster not to try H again, explaining how incredibly addictive and destructive it is. In response, the OP wrote this: "Please, no more comments telling me I'm going to be a homeless addict dying of an overdose now. Don't lecture me with all of your misconceptions and lack of any real knowledge or experience about the drug. I understand if you know someone who has been hurt by it. We all do. Any drug can ruin lives. Please ask me questions instead of trying to lecture me and do some research first before spewing lies." And that's how it starts. The quiet denial. The justifications. He isn't chasing the high yet. He's still chasing control. Convincing himself he still has it. But addiction never arrives all at once. It builds, inch by inch, until it has you. Then, 7 years later, he made another post. Spontaneous H writes, "I don't know if anyone here remembers me, but you can look through my submissions history and get an idea. It's not pretty. and will take you through a journey of my first time trying H to my life quickly falling apart. So take that as a warning, it's graphic. I was totally out of my mind, and you may not want to read it depending on where you're at. This is the first time I've logged into this account in a couple years, and I had a bunch of PMs. And people occasionally mention this account in various places on Reddit, so I'll post a quick update here for anyone who stumbles upon this in the future. I'm now almost 6 years clean from all drugs and alcohol, and life is good. It's too difficult for me to go back and even read most of what I originally wrote 7 years ago. Maybe one day I'll be able to. I don't even remember what I said in the first post, but I know I can look back objectively and say that things probably weren't as good and normal before I tried H that time as I made it seem in that first post. There were certainly warning signs before that with alcohol, weed, and other things that I had issues with. Substances, although I probably couldn't admit it to myself at the time. I would have never tried it if things were truly going well for me. What followed in the later posts with where it all took me was very real. Thanks to everyone who has reached out over the years. I hope everyone here is able to find the recovery and get the help they need. Plane crash. Tragedies happen every single day. A car crash on a back road, a fight that went too far, a mass shooting somewhere other than here, somewhere far away. Quiet chaos and destruction are happening everywhere around us, but oftentimes we don't hear it. The world keeps on turning. Cities keep glowing, and most of us never notice. Not because we don't care, but because the pain of others is easy to overlook because it isn't happening to us. Somewhere, right now, someone's whole life is coming apart, and we'll never know because it wasn't us. January 15th, 2023. Yeti Airlines Flight 691 was coming in to land at its destination in Pokhara, Nepal. The flight, carrying 68 passengers, was in the final moments of a 25-minute journey from Nepal's capital city of Kathmandu. The pilots were in clear communication with air traffic control, who had just cleared the runway. They disengaged their autopilot, lowered their landing gear, and prepared to touch down. Inside the plane, the passengers were enjoying the final moments of their flight. They talked among themselves about the breathtaking view from hundreds of feet above ground. One man, Sonu Jaiswal, was on Facebook, live streaming his landing. He made a silly voice for those watching and quoted a popular South Asian meme, getting funny reactions from viewers. The camera shakes slightly as Sonu laughs, panning toward the window. The city of Pokhara stretches over the small window, bright rooftops, winding roads, and the glimmer of sunlight gleaming against the soft clouds. The weather is perfect. The sun is warm. There is no sign of panic, no sense that anything is going wrong. The passengers around him smile, relaxed, and as the plane brakes gently for descent. Then, without warning, the video jolts, a sudden tilt, gasps. The camera catches a flash of sky as it's yanked around by the force of something we can't see. Seconds later, the pilots become aware of a sudden engine failure. The dual engines had feathered out and were providing no thrust. The plane was gliding, but in order to land, they'd need to turn. And unfortunately, this would cost them their lives. The live stream continues for a few more seconds, enough to hear the confusion, the rising terror, the screaming before, in an instant, a blinding white light flashes across the screen. The sound of screeching metal on metal and a dull roar. Viewers who had been watching Sonu's live stream are left staring at the ruins of a plane crash. Roaring flames erupt inches from the camera's lens, consuming the image. The fire grows for a few more seconds, getting brighter, hotter, and then the camera falls. We see the last of a smoke-screened sky and the jagged metal of the newly planted ruin. On r/interestingasf, a now inactive user posted the footage of the crash. It's not gruesome, no blood, no bodies, just a happy man filming his final moments. And then fire. One commenter writes, "It's so eerie seeing the final moments of someone's life so clearly, almost like it's not something I'm supposed to be seeing. just so tragic I can't imagine what their families must be feeling. For a few days, the video spread like wildfire. Shared, reposted, dissected frame by strangers on every corner of the internet. News outlets ran headlines about the tragedy, but online, it became something else. Content. People debated what went wrong, analyzed the angle of descent, and the final ruling was that the pilots had made a mistake. They had moved the wrong lever when trying to engage the flaps for landing. And that was that. Watching the video, there's something hauntingly human about it. A man, alive and laughing one moment, gone the next. No warning, no fade to black, just an ordinary morning that ended in tragedy. And it exists today as one of the most disturbing videos I've seen to date. Not because it's gruesome, but because it's a horrific example of a calm, quiet moment that turned into someone's last. Tier 3. r/ask-a-horrorist. There is one abuse that is simply unforgivable, and the damage it does to a person isn't easily perceived. It is often committed by family members or friends, people you give your heart to, people who abuse your trust. Victims often go years without speaking about their abuse, afraid they won't be believed, or worse, that they will be blamed. The systems that should protect them often fail them, and by the time anyone listens, there is no longer a space for retribution or justice. What follows is a lifetime of rebuilding, learning to live in a world where people can be cruel and untrustworthy, and justice isn't always swift, where friends and family could be future aggressors, where around every corner could be an attacker. I'm talking about the R word, but from here on out, I'll call it non-consensual intimacy, because it just has more respect than the R word. There have been many Reddit threads over the years that have discussed non-consensual intimacy, and most would agree. These threads are helpful and important. It gives a voice to the otherwise voiceless, a platform to share their stories and raise awareness for others in a similar situation. But one Reddit user was curious about another element of their stories: the violent party, the perpetrators. In 2012, a user created a new thread, and although it was quickly taken down, the content remains available to this day through archiving. The title was Ask an R-Wordist. Here is the original post by the deactivated user, and some of the comments that followed. Reddit has had a few threads about non-consensual intimacy victims, but are there any Redditors from the other side of the story? What were your motivations? Do you regret it? One commenter shared their own story. I was a freshman and hooking up with this girl who got undressed in bed with me, then said no. I was extremely excited, so I ignored her and did it. She realized what was happening and tried to stop me, but it was too late and I was much stronger than her. Lasted maybe a minute, 2 tops. No protection. That was stupid. I hooked up with her a few more times. I rationalized the first time through the other times, but I know that's a pretty shitty thing to do. The other times I used protection and she didn't say no, but she seemed uncomfortable. Now I feel terrible about it and I wish I hadn't done it. When my daughter is old enough, I'm going to have a very frank conversation on male-female relations of the sort that I don't think most girls get. Another, more despicable commenter had this to say: I have R-worded both the girls I have had long-term relationships with, each on more than one occasion, and each time has been among my most enjoyable and memorable experiences. Retaining the relationships despite this has been difficult, although my current girl is at least attracted to consensual non-consent. I have succeeded in blaming events on substance abuse, too drunk, too wired, on physical accident, it slipped, on claiming to have thought they were playing along with a fantasy, or not realizing they were too intoxicated to consent, and more. I consider myself to be adept at manipulating the feelings of others, and do commit a large effort to my partner in other theaters of life in order to ensure that they remain satisfied with our arrangement overall. I understand that it would be typical to feel guilty for the situation, As far as I can determine, I do not. Frankly, this entire thread was beyond sickening to read, and the actions of these men are disgusting and inexcusable. Both of the comments I read were heavily censored, so yeah, these were both heavily censored, so it seemed like they were almost reliving it, almost. It was just very gross. In the descriptions they both gave, almost lustfully describing the horrific crimes they committed. I cannot speak into words how angry this thread made me, and I'm glad it was taken down, so no one has to see the full extent of their depravity ever again. A lot of sick people out there. My grandfather, the child lover. For these next few entries, I'm not going to do much introduction, as the content is extremely disturbing. The stories are very detailed and pretty long, so I'm just going to read them as is. With that being said, here is our next post. Posted about a month ago, so pretty recent. User Infant and Innocent writes, "My grandfather turned out to be a child lover. My family found out today. Let me start by saying that he is not my biological grandfather, but I only found out about this when I was 10 years old. Nobody tried to explain this to me, and so I grew up with the idea that he was my real grandfather and just grew up like an ordinary child. I don't remember much from my childhood, but when I was 15, strange memories began to pop up into my head. They were all related to my grandfather, that he supposedly had inappropriate contact with me during my daytime nap. I don't remember anything specific about these events, and I always thought that it was my strange childhood invention because no one else in my family talked about it. But today changed everything. My mother asked me to call her and said that 4 days ago, she was told that my grandfather had inappropriate contact with my cousin. My cousin is 11. My grandfather did it while she was sleeping, but in reality, she was awake and was just afraid to show it. I don't know how she told the others about it. My older cousin said that she came to her work in tears and said, our grandfather is a child lover. Also, child lover is kind of code for the P word. So I can't say it on YouTube, but you know what I mean. I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but child lover in place of the P word. And anyways, let's keep going. My older cousin and I discussed this, and it turned out that we both had similar memories. And apparently what I remembered was not my imagination, but reality. Now we are both in our 20s. She didn't know that he had ever had inappropriate contact with me. And when she told the others, her mother and grandmother did not believe her. I didn't know about this, and that's why I kept silent too. To help you understand, I also have 2 younger sisters who are not cousins. One of them, the middle sister, rarely went to see her grandparents, so I hope this passed her by. But for the last 2 years, my youngest sister spent almost all of her free time at her grandparents' house, constantly spending the night there with my cousin. My mother is very afraid that she could have also been subjected to this. She also asked me in a conversation if something like this had ever happened to me. I initially said no, but after talking to my older cousin, I wrote her a message where I shared the information and explained that I was still not sure if it was real. She forwarded my message to my grandmother to prove to her that this was not the only case with my younger cousin. I don't know how my grandmother is. I don't want to call her after I found out that she didn't believe my older cousin and allowed it to happen again. I also understand her feelings. She lived her whole life not the way she wanted and was afraid of condemnation from others. So my cousin and her aunt decided not to press charges against her grandfather. Instead, they told him to leave town, but he still comes to them and scolds them for rushing him. I am torn apart by emotions. I love my grandfather. I felt sorry for him when my grandmother yelled at him, and he always called me his beloved granddaughter. I am disgusted by what he did, but at the same time, it hurts me to think that he has to urgently look for housing, and he suffered a stroke, 2 heart surgeries. During these periods, I came and looked after him together with other family members. It's all terrible. I'm far from family, but I feel like it's falling apart. I am very afraid that this affected my younger sisters. My father wants to kill my grandfather after he found out that I might have also suffered the same abuse. My uncle is returning from his shift tomorrow, and he doesn't know what grandfather did. My uncle is a mentally unhealthy man and loves his daughter very much, so everyone is afraid that he will actually kill my grandfather. I'm sitting here and I don't know how to deal with this. I love my family. I love my grandparents. I wanted to introduce my fiance to them, and now everything is falling apart. My grandfather is a child lover. My grandmother and aunt once turned a blind eye to this, and only now have they all started to act. And then they feel sorry for him and allowed him to return home so that he can take some things. It was as if my grandmother kicked him out only because my younger cousin, with the support of my older cousin, spoke openly about the harassment. And I still don't know if he did anything to my little sister. It hurts me to think that she could have also gone through the same thing. I don't know what to do with all this. I need advice. And then one of the top comments on the post read as follows. Dude, I'm really sorry to hear about this. It's a horrible revelation and it's totally okay to feel torn. It's not about having a perfect response, because there's no playbook for a crap storm like this. Your feelings and memories are valid. Don't doubt yourself. Try seeking professional help if things get overwhelming. Wishing strength to you and your family right now. Remember, it's okay to cut ties for healing. Blood isn't always thicker than water. During such times, self-care has got to coast above everything else. Stay strong, hoping for justice where it's due. Mad respect for speaking up. My son, my daughter. This next post was a comment on the subreddit Ask Reddit, answering the question, what's your secret that could literally ruin your life if it came out? User ABCH shares their story. Background. I'm a guy in my late 20s who was taken into care age 7. Everyone around me already knows that I was brought up by foster families because I had a bad early childhood. I deliberately keep it vague and say stuff like I'd rather not go into it, so that people will just assume I was abused in some way and they'll stop asking about it. The truth is that for the first 7 years of my life, I was brought up as a girl by my psycho birth mother, who really wanted a daughter and didn't let the snag of giving birth to a boy stop her from trying to raise one. She was a pretty successful professional in a legal field, not entirely sure what, and had me via anonymous sperm donor from a fertility clinic. She found out I was a boy at a late ultrasound and then moved across the country. She gave birth to me at home and continued to move about until I was about 5 or so. It was just the two of us all my life. So we had contact with other people, of course, but they rarely got very close. I had lots of friends, but was always supervised. I found out way after that my mother's strong paternal Christianity was a lie she used to explain why she was so strict about me being private and never letting anyone see me getting changed or anything. I just accepted all of this as fact, having never been told anything different. I was sent to a religious school for girls and had a really great childhood. I was a bit of a tomboy and played with Lego and toy animals, rather than dolls and stuff. But that's not unusual, and no one ever questioned if I was a girl, even me. I knew about men and women, but I had never really seen many naked people. My mother never ever spoke to me about it, but I kinda had the impression that when I grew up and got boobs and stuff, my male parts would kind of fall off or something, and I would be a woman, and other kids would keep theirs and they'd be men. I don't know, to be honest, I never really thought about it. Anyway, I carried on with my happy girlhood and had a bunch of friends and everything was great until I was 7 and a teacher accidentally spilled a cup of hot coffee over me at school. The liquid soaked through my clothes and was scalding me, so the staff immediately stripped me out of my dress and underwear to get the hot coffee away from my skin. And then they found out. The cops were called and I got taken to speak with who I guess would be social services. They asked me a bunch of questions about life at home and stuff. Meanwhile, my mother was taken in for questioning too. She refused to acknowledge me as male and insisted I was her daughter because she was, delusional and stuff. I wasn't allowed to go back home but got put with a foster family and went through loads of therapy and stuff. The worst part was that literally overnight, I lost everything. My mother, my home, all my toys, all my clothes. I moved schools so lost all my friends. They cut all my hair off and told me I wasn't a girl anymore. It was really traumatic. The first foster home wasn't that great. They had 3 boys already, and going from a sheltered, religious-only child upbringing to a rough and tumble testosterone-filled environment was really difficult. They tried to force me to emasculate, and I was just too confused about what they wanted. Anything girly was reprimanded, and I felt so lost and alone because nothing I did was right. I tried to commit S-word when I was 11, and again at 13 because I didn't feel like I fit in anywhere. After the second attempt, they moved me to a different foster family who were awesome. I consider them to be my parents. They actually stood up for me. The first thing was that they let me grow my hair. From when I got taken into care, they buzzed my hair short, and I hated it. They always had to hold me down and do it forcibly when I was crying and fighting. My new parents flatly refused to do it and said that loads of boys had long hair. They also let me quit karate and football and take up swimming and jazz dance. Since I'd been in care, no one had ever stood up for my right to choose what activities to do or how to dress before. It was amazing. In the end, I came out of it with a pretty healthy gender identity. I'm a guy, but not the most butch guy ever, but I'm fine with that. I went through school and got my degree and have a pretty good job and amazing, supportive wife. Everything looks great, but I can never speak about my early childhood and how I grew up as a little girl. The boy on the phone. 911 operators have one of the most important and devastating jobs on the planet. It's commonplace to develop mental exhaustion from all of the terrible things one has to hear working such a difficult job. This is one story posted by Stepside79 in response to the question, 911 operators, what's the scariest call you've ever answered? The user replies, I've posted this before when someone asked me what the most important call I've ever had in my job. So here goes. I'm a 911 police dispatcher. The most important phone call I ever received is when I just started with the police about 16 years ago. I was 21, about 2 months in, very green and still getting used to this crazy job. So I get a call from a male who flipped his car on the highway and was trapped. This wasn't unusual, to be honest. It does happen from time to time, especially in rural areas and at night when people drive while they're sleepy. Most people are bugging out and screaming while I try to get their info and send help. My job is basically to obtain a location, start police, fire, and ambulance rolling that way, and keep the caller calm and speaking to me to make sure he doesn't lose consciousness. So the driver involved, who I'll call Zach, was about my age-ish, early 20s, very calm and cooperative and even joking. He was hanging upside down because the car was on its side and he hadn't injured his leg. It was all good. Help was about 10 minutes out, and Zach and I were chatting and even laughing about this crazy experience. I knew he was blocking the roadway in his vehicle and was hoping a passerby would stop and help him out. Unfortunately, he was on a blind corner, and a car came flying around and struck his rolled over vehicle while he was still talking to me. Lots of screaming and yelling. I could tell he was pretty messed up, but I tried to keep him talking. He was just coughing and moaning. Sadly, the 10 things that need to happen for a car to ignite happened. Smoke and flame started pouring into Zach's car, and he started screaming, "Fire! I'm on fire." Basically, I listened while this poor kid burned to death. I still think about that call daily when I come to work. I've trained several new dispatchers and told that story to all of them. I've always said it's the most important call I've ever taken because nothing will ever be as bad as that. It's helped me deal with all sorts of madness I've been involved in, including hundreds of essays, domestics, shootings, pursuits, hostage situations, etc. But yeah, after that, the rest of this is easy. And now onto tier 4, and this is getting to some rough stuff. Some very disturbing things, and also I'll keep the kind of intros kind of short because the posts themselves are super long, so I'll just keep the intro very short for each one. But onto the first entry being, my son is disabled. This next story is by a single mother, user Special Needs Devil, who made a post explaining her situation and received heavy backlash for the story we're about to hear in detail. This was her response. She writes, I can't tell anyone this, even my therapist. Lambaste me if you want, and maybe I even deserve it. I only ask what you would do if you were in my situation, not what you think people should do, what you would really do. I'm a single mom of 2 boys, 12 and 7. My husband passed away 3 years ago in a work accident. A very large portion of me believe it was a S word. I can't see him ever making the mistake he made that caused his death. And he had taken an action just before that, which ensured his coworkers weren't in the room. I fully believed he committed S word because of our younger son, and no one will ever change my mind. We were told when I was pregnant that he would have Down syndrome. We could handle that, even if it was severe. It turned out he has a chromosome deletion. His disorder is kind of rare, so I won't post which specific one, but suffice to say, he'll never be anything more than he is now or has ever been. And what he is nothing. He doesn't appear to have any awareness and never has. His eyes are locked in one position. He doesn't respond to noise, touch, or pain. He is total care. He is capable of nothing. He is tube fed and on oxygen. He is in diapers and will forever be. He makes no sounds, no attempts to communicate. He never even really cried as a baby. He has never made an attempt to interact with anyone or his environment. I'm not upset because I got a special needs imperfect child. I feel the way I feel because this thing takes up 200% of my time and does nothing. I didn't get an imperfect child. I didn't get a child. I don't love him. He doesn't have any personality. There is nothing to love. And yet I'm responsible for him. In addition to his extreme delays, he's also medically fragile. Respiratory crises, fecal impactions, his autonomic nervous system doesn't function properly, issues with his G-tube, infections, pressure sores, no matter what we put him on or how we position him. Our older son has suffered because his non-existent brother has colored everything in his life. He's had medical care get delayed because there's only one of me and his brother is more critical. We do have a visiting home nurse, but only 20 hours a week, and we aren't eligible for more. I was starting law school. I gave up my dreams and my plans for my children for this potato. My older son can't do a lot of things he wants to because of the younger's need for care and appointments. The final straw was I heard a sound. I went into younger son's room to check, thinking he had forgotten how to breathe again, and saw older son hitting him and screaming, "You're why I don't have a mother. You're why I don't have a father. You're why I can't have friends over. You're why I can't be in sports. I didn't ask for you, and I hope you die." Instead of being horrified, I watched. And younger son just did not react. No signs of pain, or fear, or upset. No reaction at all. He breathes, but he is not alive. He doesn't know who I am. He doesn't know who older son is. He has no sense of self, life experience, or awareness of his surroundings. He doesn't need to be in my home. He doesn't know or care where he is. He is genetically my son, but he is not family. My previously abused, brain-damaged cat who can't walk straight has more personality and is far more lovable than my child. In fact, I was looking forward to raising a Downs baby, even one with severe impairments for that reason. With disability can come gifts. This boy is not a gift. He is a genetic mistake I probably should have miscarried and would have definitely terminated if I'd known he would have been like this. And the flip side is, if he has awareness, he's miserable, and there's nothing I can do. If he has likes and dislikes, no one knows what they are. If he is in pain, he can't tell anyone. If he wants anything, he can't communicate. He's had every imaginable therapy. Nothing has made a difference. And so he's leaving our home on the 29th. I feel excited and relieved, and then guilty, because I know we'll be happier with him gone. He's already taken my husband and my son's father. He was working so much overtime to pay for this cucumber's care, for the experimental therapies insurance wouldn't cover, because this was going to be the breakthrough. He was tired and defeated and disappointed. He sought counseling as well, but I don't think he could ever say the words, "I don't want my son in my home," either. He's ruined my older son. I was so wrapped up on the younger, I never realized how ignored and damaged he was. He lost his father too. I didn't just lose my husband. He is my priority now, and this malignant lump can be someone else's problem. At least they will be paid a wage to care for him. At least they'll get a break from him when they punch out. I just want to never think of him again, and I'm not sorry. And for that, I'm sorry. Thanks for reading. Edit. Thanks Pyconeeks for calling me a liar. Are you a medical doctor? If your Google foo was any good, you would have stumbled on 3P mosaic deletion duplication syndrome. That is the disorder my son has. I've basically identified myself by posting that, but hey, it's better than the PMs telling me to commit S-word. If you look at the features of 3P deletion syndromes, they look like Downs. My insurance didn't cover AFP testing, which would have told us it wasn't Downs, and I didn't think we needed it. I had a regular ultrasound and a 3D. Both doctors were 99% sure it was Downs. This post was absolutely not fiction. Instead, the mods and especially Pyconeeks just decided it was. If anyone would like, I'll dox myself. You can see my ID to verify my name, my marriage license, and my husband's death certificate. I will then link you to the news article of the freak industrial accident that ended his life so you can see it's the same person. As for not choosing hospice for my son, I can't. About a year ago, I myself was hospitalized with severe depression and CPTSD. There was proof of that too. During that time, my late husband's mother petitioned to get control as my son's medical proxy and got it. I'm fighting it, but it's a long, complicated process. There are competency hearings, there are statements from doctors and evaluations. Unless she okays hospice, which she refuses, I cannot decide that. I have custody. I cannot make medical decisions. She agreed to residential care, which I feel is the second best option. So he's going into residential care. As for mistaking a child choking with hitting, I was downstairs. I couldn't hear what my older son was saying. I only knew he was speaking. Go punch a blanket, or I don't know, a person with weak muscle tone. Then asked said person with meek muscles to cough. They didn't cough normally / forcefully. It's more a strong puff. Similar to, again, I don't know, a muted punch. When you're used to jumping at every strange sound, it's difficult to discern what's what sometimes. And that post is just beyond depressing for, sadly, everybody involved. I mean, hopefully everybody in that family can find some sort of happiness or solace in what they end up doing. But I hope her son, both sons, end up all right. I hope she ends up all right. And rest in peace, her husband. I mean, yeah, very depressing story. And hopefully they're doing better now. Bring her back. All right, and now onto the final post of today's video and the iceberg. And fair warning, this one is incredibly depressing, even more infuriating, and very, very disturbing. Posted by user F Your Coconut, our last post is titled, "You Can Come Over Again When You Bring Me My Daughter." Hello, I'm a first-time poster, but I discovered this subreddit a few months ago. I was talking about this subreddit with my therapist, and she gave me the homework of speaking out more about my story to see if it lessened my pain. I've written and deleted this post maybe 7 times now, but I think it's time to get it out. I've spoken English for 30 years, but it's not my first language, and occasionally I use the words wrong because that's what the direct translation is, so I apologize in advance if I confuse anyone. This is going to be a long post as I'm a rambler, and there is a lot of background involved. This happened 12 years, 2 months, and 13 days ago, on Wednesday, November 2nd, 2005. My husband got married in 2002 and had our son 10 months later in the same year. In May 2004, we welcomed our twin girls. My family was beautiful. Every time I took a picture of us, we looked like the family in the stock photos you can Google for. My husband is an engineer, and I'm a college professor. We had a nice house in the city. Our children were healthy and happy. We even had a golden retriever named Argo, as if we weren't the picture of a familial happiness as is. I can no longer look at the pictures of us because it makes me too angry. When my twin girls were born, we had no issues in the hospital. They were born right on their due date, latched perfectly, and passed all their postnatal tests with stellar stats. When we brought them home, however, we noticed that one of the girls, let's call her oldest daughter, since she was a whole 4.5 minutes older than her sister, was developing a rash. I hadn't really dealt with allergies in kids since my son didn't have them, and neither did any child or adults in my entire family. I wasn't sure what it was. I thought that maybe she just had sensitive skin like me. I can't tolerate certain fabrics because I have very dry skin, and I'll often break out in rashes if my skin decides that it doesn't like something. So I stopped using fabric softener on all the clothes. I bought the nicest, most comfortable bedding and clothes. At one point, I even made her clothes myself in the fear that maybe something in the manufacturing process was upsetting my oldest daughter. We went to the doctor several times, and they knew that she was having an allergic reaction to something. But every test came back negative, and we couldn't figure out what it was. It took 3 more months to figure it out. During that time, her allergic reactions got more and more severe. At one point, she was the only baby in the history of the hospital who had to be kept in a clean room because she seemed to have a reaction the minute she left. When that happened, we began an elimination therapy that would rival the lifestyle of Buddhist monks. My husband and I moved our son and youngest daughter in with his parents because we needed to eliminate everything from our routine to figure out what was causing the reaction in our oldest daughter. We stopped using our soap, our shampoo, our deodorants, our laundry detergents, and that was before we even got to our diet. It took us 3 more months, but we finally figured it out. Our oldest daughter was allergic to coconut. The doctors told us that it was a particularly rare allergen, and so it wasn't on any of the skin test panels they ran. When we found out what she was allergic to, we were relieved. So relieved. But in addition to feeling relieved, I delved into a bout of hysterical laughter. I laughed so hard I cried. And to this day, my husband tells me that he didn't know if I was crying from relief or pure happiness. You see, I come from a culture that uses coconut almost religiously. It's in our cooking. We break a coconut open at religious events. It's used in almost all sweets. It's in everything. The reason I was laughing was because of how much I hated one particular use for coconut. When I was a kid, pretty much up until I was in the 8th class, my mother would put coconut oil in my hair all the time. It looked greasy as hell. I hated it. And once I was old enough to start doing my own hair, I never put that stuff in my hair ever again. I was laughing so hard because of course I had a daughter with a severe allergy to the one thing I hated my entire life. We had a lot of fun telling people about our allergy, and everyone laughed because they all knew about my hatred for coconut oil. We told my mother and she laughed as well. She made jokes about how my baby must have heard me talking about my hatred for coconut oil while she was still cooking inside me, and decided that she needed to hate it too. We all got a good laugh and left it at that. Or so I thought. My mother and I have always had a contentious relationship at best. We got along well enough, but we disagreed vehemently on certain topics. She wanted a traditional daughter who'd be religious, get a college degree in marriage, and marry a man that she and my father picked out, common where I'm from, have 2 kids, a house in the suburbs near her, and be a stay-at-home mom like her. I'm not religious in the slightest. I have 2 undergraduate degrees, went on to get a master's, and a PhD. Didn't get married until 27, late in my culture. And I married a man who was the polar opposite of what my parents wanted. As if this wasn't enough, I was a working mom who didn't need her to babysit since my husband and I made more than enough for a part-time nanny. Essentially, the best way I can summarize our relationship is by saying that she was very proud of me and loved to talk about my accomplishments. But I could always tell that she wished I was something else. We have a fair amount of safe topics that we can talk about, but I could never discuss anything too serious with her, such as politics or my career. Not because she'd get mad at me, but because she just wasn't interested. And I hate getting into conversations where I'm passionate about something, but the other person could care less. As far as raising my children, my mother would agree 99.9% of the time she was hands off and respected all of my decisions. even if she didn't like them sometimes. Example, I chose not to raise my kids religiously, but I still took them to community events so they could understand their roots, and my mother never pushed them to pray. The only thing she continually got on my case about was the coconut oil thing. You see, my girls have very textured and curly hair. We don't really know where they got it from. Considering my husband and I have pin straight hair that won't even hold a paperclip in it without slipping. I loved it. It was a little on the rough side, and my mother always insisted that a little bit of oil would make the curls soft and more defined. I always said no. Sure, we could use a different type of oil, but my girls were still so young, and the allergy process had made me terrified of incorporating new things into their routine. I made sure I explained why to my mom too. She remembered what we'd gone through with my oldest daughter and her allergy. She brought me food and clothes at the hospital more than a few times. She helped me move all my furniture and clothes out of my house when I was eliminating every possible source of allergen. She taught me how to cook from scratch when I was eliminating certain foods from the kids' diet. She knew everything about my oldest daughter's struggle. To this day, I cannot understand how she did what happened next. November 2nd, 2005. I was giving a midterm that day to my students, and I had to be at my research lab late that night. My husband was away at some conference, and our nanny was down with the flu, so she couldn't watch the kids that day. So I had my mom come take them for the day. My son was almost 3 years old, and the girls were a year and a half old. Overnight visits with my parents weren't exactly common, but they weren't unusual either. They had always come back from these visits very happy and well taken care of, so I had no second thoughts about leaving them with my parents. They spoke to me on the phone after their lunch, and then around 5 p.m., we video chatted. The kids were also happy and healthy. I got home around 10:30 p.m. that night and called my mom to see if the kids were up by any chance, and I could say goodnight. I missed the kids by about 20 minutes. They had already gone to bed. So I talked to my mom for a little bit, but she's a pretty early sleeper too, so we hung up and went to bed. I woke up around 5 a.m. the next morning to go pick up my husband from the airport at 6. We were going to get breakfast together and then go pick up the kids. I picked up my husband, and neither one of us was very hungry yet, so we thought it'd be a nice treat to pick up the kids first and go to breakfast/brunch with my parents. We got to my parents' house at 7:45 a.m. My parents were not there. My son was at the neighbor's house and ran outside with the neighbor as soon as he saw his daddy and me pull up. He was hysterical and crying and could not calm him down. My blood pressure was rising because now I'm thinking that something horrible had happened to my parents. My neighbor tells me that she isn't sure what's happening, but there was an ambulance at my parents' house at 6 a.m., and my dad had run over and woke them up to see if they could watch my son for a few hours until he got back. Of course, they'd said yes. I'm calling my parents nonstop at this point, and I'm getting frantic because I don't know what's happening. My son was still crying, but he was calmer. He still couldn't really explain to me what had happened though. I honestly don't remember the details of what happened next, but somehow we figured out that the ambulance was from X hospital nearby, and we broke several driving laws trying to get there. We got to the hospital, pulled into the emergency entrance that was for ambulances only, left the car, and bolted inside. A few nurses took notice of us immediately and were asking us what was wrong. I was calmer than my husband at this point, so I explained that I didn't know, but my twin girls and my parents were here somewhere. I'll never forget the look on that nurse's face. She knew exactly who I was in that moment, and she was about to cry. Another nurse took me and my husband to an empty room and asked us to calm down and listen to the doctor before we went to find my family. My mother had put coconut oil in both my daughter's hair before bed. The girls loved it when my mom did their hair, and so they had asked for braids, and my mom was doing their hair. She put coconut oil in both their hair because it would make for smoother braids. According to my son, my older daughter started to get a little dizzy and itchy when my mom was doing her hair, so my mom gave her some kids' Benadryl, which made her sleepy. Since it was close to bedtime anyways, the kids then went to bed. Giving her Benadryl was something we did whenever she had a mild reaction, since it usually meant she accidentally came across some coconut from a secondary source. We also showered her from head to toe immediately to erase any lingering traces of it. My mother simply gave her some Benadryl and kept the coconut oil in her hair and put her to fucking sleep. The Benadryl made her sleepy and unable to wake up or be conscious enough to wake up her brother or cry. She vomited in her sleep, and the rash spread all over. Her little body was swollen to twice the size. She had asphyxiated in her sleep. She died painfully and slowly in the early hours of the morning. My mother had found her when she went to check on the kids in the morning around 7 a.m. She was already dead by then. My mother screamed, called for my dad, and that's when they'd gone to the hospital. My dad had not known about the coconut oil until my mom explained, and to this day, I've never seen my father so angry. He was still unable to look at my mother out of fury or look at me out of shame when I saw him at the hospital. They had rushed me to the hospital hoping there was some way to save my oldest daughter and to get my youngest daughter checked out immediately since he thought she might have a mild allergy as well. I can't even explain to you the emotions my husband and I felt. I remember seeing my little girl and just being in denial. There was no way that she was gone. This had to be a horrible, horrible nightmare. The following days, the funeral, and explaining to my other kids what had happened are events I still can't talk about because it just breaks a part of me. My mother was investigated, as well as my entire family. I almost lost my kids to my country's version of CPS because they thought my kids were in danger. My husband and I had to fight tooth and nail to show that uprooting them during this time would be the worst thing for them at the moment. My mother was never arrested. My father did leave her, though they're not officially divorced. The majority of my mother's family refused to speak to her, and the few that do speak to her only do so on a limited basis. She currently lives on her own in a small town, and every couple of months I'll get a call from her telling me how sorry she is and how she just wasn't thinking, and can I please find a way to forgive her? She wants to come see me. The only thing I can find to ever say to her is, you can come see me when you bring my daughter with you. It's been 13 years. My oldest son just got his license this year, and my youngest daughter is going to start high school soon. Both of them are healthy, and they're turning into amazing adults. But neither one has been the same since my oldest daughter passed away. My oldest son is extremely protective of my youngest daughter and doesn't allow anyone to breathe rudely in his presence. My youngest daughter used to be so bubbly and such a talkative little kid, but she's quiet now. When she does speak, it takes some effort to hear her because she's so quiet. She told me a few years ago that she knows she was only a baby when it happened, but she feels incomplete all the time, like a part of her is missing. I didn't know what to say to her. If it weren't for my dear husband, I don't think I could have ever recovered from the loss of my daughter. We have helped each other through the loss. It's taken over a decade of therapy to even get to this point. I don't know what I expect to get out of typing all this out, but I've seen how much comfort this subreddit brings other posters, so hopefully I find some of the same peace. And that was the last post of today's iceberg. The first story we have is of the user AFH43. His account was created on May 16th, 2015, but there was no activity until 2016 when he started asking questions about hoodies, sneakers, and music production. Pretty normal if you ask me. However, this would soon change as a year later, in 2017, he made a disturbing post which then led him to descend into an extreme existential crisis and a state of derealization. The theory of quantum immortality has driven me to a state of pure anxiety and terror over the last week. Is it true? Has it been debunked? I can't do this anymore. Now, for those of you who do not know what quantum immortality is, it is basically the idea that you never truly die. Instead, your consciousness continues in a parallel universe where you survive. To dive deeper into this, quantum immortality is a thought experiment derived from the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics. It suggests that a conscious observer can never truly experience their own death. The idea is based on the notion that, in situations with a non-zero probability of survival, the observer will always find themselves in the branch of reality where they continue to exist. To debunk his theory, a user named John Hazler replied by saying, "Quantum immortality just means that you will never wake up dead. Think about it. The only state you will ever observe yourself to be in is alive. That's only one of the problems with it. Another is that death is not an instantaneous quantum transition. It's a slow, messy process by which the collection of atoms that you are currently pleased to call me becomes so disorganized as to be unable to call themselves anything, and then began to stink. You will likely be there for much of the process and know what is happening. Don't worry, you are in no danger of being forced to live forever against your will." But by then, user AFH43 had already fallen down a deep rabbit hole with no way out. He went on to make multiple posts in subreddits like r/AskScience and r/AskPhilosophy, searching for some sort of answer. The possibility of quantum immortality is making my life unbearable. Is it a credible theory? It makes complete sense to me, and I can't believe I'm the only one losing my mind over it. I'm freaked out at the possibility of quantum immortality. Is it a credible theory? Scared of quantum immortality, please help me. Why don't you believe in it? The theory of quantum immortality has driven me to a really dark place. I'm living in a state of pure terror. Is there reason not to believe it is true? His paranoia kept on growing, and with each passing day, his anxiety worsened. He became obsessed with the idea that he might never die, trapped in a reality he could not escape. But this fear would soon push him down a very dark path. Later that year, he made a post in r/advice. Existential crisis. It won't stop. I need help. I can't do it anymore. I fear that because I am something in this universe, I will always be alive. Quantum immortality. It makes so much sense to me, and it is ruining my life. What do I do about it? I need to rest. On that post, a user asked him, "Do you also suffer from depersonalization or derealization?" To which he replied by just saying, yes. He had completely lost touch with reality, sinking into thoughts that the human mind isn't meant to comprehend. In another post on r/AskPhilosophy, he opened up a bit about his fears, but for him, this wasn't just a philosophical debate, it was a terrifying possibility, and it was driving him to the edge. That's when he reached his breaking point and made his final post. Quantum immortality. I am killing myself soon. It's too much. I can't do it anymore. Then his account went silent. Most assumed he had gone through with his plan, but in 2019, he suddenly reappeared with an explanation. This time he posted an r/relationship advice, and what he wrote was shocking. While recovering from my psychotic breakdown/suicide attempt, I, 22M, met the only girl, who was 22F, I have ever fallen in love with. Due to my state, it didn't work out. I am considering asking her out again. I am AFH43, a regular feature on those dark/creepy Reddit history threads. I am still alive. It's been a long time since I've logged into this account. I thought it had been long forgotten by everyone. However, after logging a few days ago, I saw that my inbox was full of hundreds of messages from people asking how I am or whether I am even alive. I also saw that my username had been mentioned in a lot of dark/creepy Reddit history Ask Reddit posts. These were extremely hard for me to read because I try not to think about that time in my life. Nearly 3 years ago, I woke up one morning and my mind simply broke. I believed that because of quantum immortality, I would never be able to die, and therefore would experience all of the greatest sufferings possible over and over again for all eternity. I felt there was no escape. It was like a panic attack of the highest intensity that did not end for weeks. For the first time, I understood what Emil Corian meant when he said, "We dread the future only when we are not sure we can ourselves when we want to." Surviving a suicide attempt only worsened my delusions. It was only once I started on my antipsychotic medication during my stay in a psych ward that I began to put the pieces of my life back together and returned to normality. It was during the process of getting back on my feet that I met a girl whom I completely fell for. We went on a few dates, we even kissed, but because of what I was going through, I was so nervous around her that it made things a bit awkward, and I was very much emotionally closed up. I think I just tried too hard to make something happen. I just wasn't ready. I was still recovering from a truly traumatic and horrific experience that had completely shattered my mind. I only really started to become myself, to come out of my shell, after we stopped seeing each other, and I began my first relationship with another girl. My girlfriend was a pretty incredible person, and over the last year, with her, I learned to enjoy life, to become free and uninhibited by my anxieties. I became open. I became comfortable with myself and who I was and with the constraints on my existence. I made peace with my experience with my delusions. Today, I am happy and in control of my life. Truly. At first, it seemed like he was finally at peace, accepting reality and ready to move on. But in 2020, he returned. And this time, he was worse than ever. I'm still here. Unfortunately, I'm still here. For a few years now, my life has been pretty good, but at the moment I'm having an unrelated breakdown and I'm in hospital for another mental reason. I wish I could commit suicide, but I'm still too scared. Maybe it's worth facing it though. I'll have to face death eventually. I'm stuck in hell and my life is f***ed. I might turn to drugs to have some relief from this relentless pain. I just need to sleep and never wake up. Maybe that can be my reality. I just can't do this. I feel alone. I'm terrified and numb at the same time. The default state of my life is suffering. If anyone can help dissuade me from QI, short for quantum immortality, please tell me. But please don't make it worse for me. I'm in agony. Nothingness is a beautiful thing. I just want out. I know it will transfer the pain to other people, and that makes me feel horrible. I wish I didn't have these beliefs. If I didn't, I wouldn't be here right now. Since my last post, I've been diagnosed with OCD, and that explains a lot. I've been given Seroquel today to help me start thinking rationally. This may sound stupid, but the situation has to do with heartbreak and very specific and absurd triggering factors related to it. Maybe that sounds stupid, but I found love, real love, and now it might be over. Life is suffering. I am suffering. I don't want to be here anymore. I wish this was physical pain instead. I really envy Emil Coran. It was a wonderful fantasy to him at the time because at any moment he knew he could escape, and that gave him immense comfort. My mind is broken and I don't think I'll ever be able to fix it. This was the last time anyone heard from him. At first, people assumed he had simply gone off the grid again, maybe this time to heal, to finally break free from the chaos. But everything changed in late 2024 when another user made a post about him in r/askmeanything. And this wasn't just any post. My brother killed himself because of QI. Ask me anything. At first, these posts might seem completely unrelated, but the deeper you read, the more pieces start to fall into place. A few years ago, my brother discovered quantum immortality. If you don't know what that is, quantum immortality is a thought experiment that stems from the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics. It suggests that if consciousness continues to exist in some form after death, then in some parallel universe, a person could survive events that would typically be fatal. Essentially, it implies that every time a life-threatening situation occurs, there are branches of reality where that person survives, leading to the idea that they could be immortal in those alternate realities. So, here's a scenario. Imagine a football player who is in a crucial game and faces a life-threatening injury during a play. In one universe, the injury is severe and they don't recover, ending their career. However, in another universe, the player miraculously avoids the worst of the injury and continues to play. According to the concept of quantum immortality, the player's consciousness continues in the universe where they survived, while in the other, they are no longer part of the game. This illustrates how they could be considered immortal in the sense that there's always a version of them that continues to exist. Hopefully that makes sense. My brother discovered it and went in extreme panic for weeks and weeks and constantly made posts asking about quantum immortality's flaws and asking people to explain why it's most likely false. However, no matter what people would try to explain to him, he wouldn't seem to listen. He was set. He later made posts claiming he was going to end it because QI was getting too much for him. He survived. A few years passed and we thought he was doing okay, but then he decided to let go again and didn't survive. In his note, he mentioned how QI got to him again and he couldn't take it. I also was never aware he even had a Reddit account when he was posting all those things about QI years ago, but when he passed, I decided to look through his phone and came across his account. Seeing it all the posts he made a few years ago, breaks me. People have even made videos about him. It kills me. It hurts so much. I think about QI a lot myself. If it is real, then he could still be alive in a different reality, but I try not to make myself go crazy over that shit. I hate how a dumb theory actually killed him. Anyways, yeah, ask me anything. Next up is Snapped Fingers, and trust me, he's the most disturbing Reddit user yet, and like AFH43, he shows signs of insanity and schizophrenia, but his story, it's even darker. This account was created on October 27th, 2019, and right off the bat, they started posting. I have no idea about the gender of this user, so I'm just going to refer to them as they. The very first post by this user is disturbing enough to get you invested. It read, "Saw someone get run over by a train and didn't feel anything. Sometime back, I was on my way to work at roughly, edited out I don't want drama, when some kid ran out onto the tracks and got pulverized by the train. Train used the horn a few times, which didn't deter the kid, who realized they wouldn't make it across the tracks way too late. Bystanders started freaking out after the kid got run down. One bystander was irrationally pacing in front of my vehicle, rambling incoherent nonsense. Ambulance arrives quickly and did a quick pickup, and police moved the train, and the world kept on spinning. Throughout the entire process, I felt nothing. I know it's wrong, but I didn't feel anything at all. I had to pretend to end the weird look I was beginning to get from the passenger that was with me. In media, they always say seeing a death is traumatizing and horrifying, but it doesn't make sense. I don't know them or anything else. In the end, I'm confused by the discrepancy. Am I somehow in the wrong for being indifferent in that situation, or is it something else? I know this sounds like some edgy garbage, but it is what it is, and I can't really make this not sound like that. It's clear this user is mentally disturbed, but their posts kept getting stranger and more unsettling. Most were odd but insignificant, until one post changed everything. This is where the real story begins. Seeing and hearing things that aren't there. Lately, I've been seeing and hearing things that aren't there, even more than normal. Most of the time, it's small things like seeing spiders on me in my peripheral vision, only to look at them and they disappear. Other times when I'm in bed, this thing about the thickness of a big fist pops up like a big snake on the side of my bed and looks at me only to dart back down out of sight. Whenever I investigate, nothing is there. Rarely there's full body visual hallucinations. The last one was from a couple years ago when I was taking out the garbage. The silhouette of a child crunched down on all fours and charged at me only to disappear when I looked at it. And before that, there was a large, fleshy, naked, featureless figure slowly walking on all fours in the room down the hall, approximately the average size of a man. All throughout my childhood, I had this thing that would go in my ear. This one used to terrify me, but it's gotten beyond old. Not reacting to it seems to have gotten rid of that one. Rarely, when I try to sleep, a dog that doesn't exist will bark directly in my ear every time I close my eyes. My neighbors do not own a dog, and the sound is way too close for it to be. The trick to getting rid of it is closing one eye at a time to mess it up, and it won't come back for a long time after. Most of my life, I've been seeing and hearing things, but lately, the small ones have been happening more often, mainly the spiders, and the things that pop up on the side of the bed, and small moving shadows. Relatives are super into supernatural, which I do not believe in whatsoever, so they are aware I have seen and heard things. It was just summed up as ghostly mumbo jumbo. I do not inform them about what I see and hear anymore because it's pointless and makes it worse. Burning shit in my house doesn't solve the problem. Talking about them gives them strength, and that strength builds up to bad nights where I'm swarmed. I don't want doctors involved. They've treated me as a science experiment before for other things, medical, and I don't want that again. I do not want medication. I want to remain myself. I've never used illicit drugs, alcohol, smoking, or anything in my life and never intend to. I'm more so curious if anyone has dealt with this before and what they did to get rid of it. At this point, it's clear they're suffering from either schizophrenia or very severe PTSD. Interestingly, the user claims they don't believe in the supernatural, but as their condition worsens, their beliefs take a much darker turn. A few months later, they make the following post, which was deleted right away. However, the content is publicly available on other platforms. It read, "In 2008, I stuck a power drill into my arm. For as long as I can remember, I could see and hear things that weren't real and still do. I usually see them in my peripheral vision, and when I go to look at them, they disappear. But sometimes the big ones don't go away when seen. Sometime back in 2008, I was putting together a shelf when this large black mass came out of nowhere and engulfed my unoccupied arm. I didn't see it till it was right up on me. It scared me so badly, and it was coming up from my arm for my face, so I started jamming the drill into it. On the second strike, I hit my arm and the hallucination dissipated. I had to lie when I went to get it patched up, said I slipped and stuck myself. This behavior clearly points to psychotic tendencies. Many users urged them to seek professional help, but they refused again and again. On this specific post, a user named Opinions Cause Trouble replied by saying, I wonder if maybe you can see into another dimension. I hope this doesn't cause you any more pain. Why is it when you see more than others, you are an asset to a team, but when you see things other cannot, you are crazy? I hope we find a balance in this world, however you see fit." Snapped Fingers reply is where things get interesting and downright creepy. Funny you'd mention that. There's these spiders that sometimes show up in my peripheral vision, and when they are seen, they vanish. I've come to call them interdimensional spiders. Not sure if that's actually what's going on, but it's something I thought about. The other day, there was some guy on Discord telling me about a dimensional merge. Not sure I buy it, but point being, he said something about reality being weaker in some places, causing stuff like this, and some of the things that appear seem to be curious as they just look at me, then hide. Like when I'm in bed, there's these weird arm things as thick as a fist that pop up in my peripheral at the side of my bed, and when I look at them, they dive back down the side of the bed. Just months ago, this user didn't believe in the supernatural, but now they were starting to believe that they were seeing interdimensional beings and that these visions were more than just a mental illness. By late 2019, they made another post, one even more concerning than the rest. This time, Snapped Fingers wasn't just considering it a possibility, they were convinced. How much of you do interdimensional beings require to leave you alone for good? Blood ritual. Long story short, I see things that don't appear to be actually there, but are. Recently, I've been discussing this matter with some experts on Discord, and apparently, if I give a significant part of myself, as in only from me, to these interdimensional beings, they will finally leave me alone. I've been informed a finger is enough to banish them, but I'm not convinced. I don't even know if they will take it completely or just want it removed as some peace offering. Basically, I don't know if it can be recovered. On top of that, I'm a bit skeptical on whether or not the whole ritual will work in general. Blood magic rituals are something I've never heard of until somewhat recently. Knowing now that this isn't hallucinations like I once thought, but interdimensional beings, I seek others who might have experience with banishing them, and hopefully there's a solution that's a little less extreme. That's right, Snapfingers was now considering a ritual, one that involved sacrificing a part of their body to an interdimensional being, just to be left alone. It was as if they were being manipulated. At first, they refused to believe in the supernatural, but over time, their mindset shifted, and suddenly, they were willing to perform bizarre rituals. Then, a few weeks later, a mysterious user left a comment on one of their posts. Chief, please check your DMs. Discord, it's mission critical. Snapped Fingers. I'll call you guys later, but I want to know the truth now. No BS, it's super late on my end at the moment, in need to crash. Just to be sure, check your DMs, Chief. And don't worry, everything will make sense. If you're still beyond for a bit, let's continue this or either on Discord or DMs. At first, it seemed like this user was trying to help Snapped Fingers, but their next post suggested something far more unsettling. Blurry thing by bedside ghost or no? For context, long story short, I thought these were hallucinations, then interdimensional beings, then hallucinations, but after meds didn't stop it, I'm wondering if it's ghosts. I know how it sounds, I know. Please hear out the whole thing though, please. Most of my life I've been seeing things that weren't there, or so I thought, but I'm running out of explanations. Up until a week or so, it kept getting more and more frequent, but now it kind of slowed. But now there's this thing that pops up on the side of my bed that's really blurry. It's kind of like a snake-like arm that darts up quickly, and when I look at it, it ducks back down. I only see this when in bed. I've seen it a few times before, but since the big guy stopped showing up, this little blurry snake/arm thing has increased its visits. The last time it appeared at the foot of my bed when I was playing something on Steam, the second my eyes moved it darted down. This was the best look I've had at it because it came up in nearly direct line of sight. It was mostly white with 2 or 3 black splodges on it. Previous appearances were mostly the left side of my bed, by the wall, and once on the same side but by the head of the bed. It just pops up looking at me, I think, then darting back down. The last time I stuck my head right under the bed and saw nothing. I just started addressing it as a friend during its appearances to maybe make peace with it. I'm not scared of this one, just concerned as to the origin of this thing and why it is appearing and such. Has anyone experienced this or know what it is or what it wants? Snapped Fingers was convinced that these interdimensional beings were actually ghosts now. Fast forward a few weeks, Snapped Fingers had lost grip on reality and things started getting serious. Is there really a hell portal down in the Paris catacombs? I believe that if this portal is actually there, that it might be responsible for the release of swarms of interdimensional beings that spread out worldwide. I've been looking for pictures of this portal, but keep getting images of the rooms flooded with bones inside. I need to find the portal's exact location so I can get an off-the-rails guide down there to shut down this portal. I have put together enough money for a flight and to get equipment that can be flown over there. I haven't quite figured out how to shut down the portal yet, but I'm still working on that matter with a duo that has shut down hell portals before. I've been working on this plan for a while now, and now that I'm so close, there's now being airports shut down because these interdimensional beings released a biblical plague to stop this from happening. I need to find this portal. If you haven't guessed it yet, the plan Snapped Fingers mentioned was actually the same critical mission the mysterious user referenced earlier. This suggests they weren't acting alone, but were being influenced or even controlled by a group feeding into their delusions. Then right before starting their journey, Snapped Fingers made another post to update everyone that this is really happening. Advice for traversing unofficial routes in the Paris catacombs. I am in need of advice for traversing the Paris catacombs unofficial/alternative routes. Below is for context. In a few short days, I will be traveling via an alternative means to Paris to bypass the lockdown. I'm making this trip to shut down the hell portal deep within the Paris catacombs. This portal is responsible for enabling an interdimensional hell incursion into our world. The twisted beings coming from this portal cannot be seen by all, but I can see them and they aren't quite nice. They reach under your door and charge at you, or if they're small, crawl all over you. These beings do not belong in our plane of existence, yet someone erected this portal and we built on top of it. I know how it might sound, but this is real. These beings truly exist. If I were in your shoes, I'd probably be thinking this poster is a nut or two. My current equipment for my journey as of now is 1 big metal industrial flashlight, 20 turpentine holy ritual flasks to banish small entities, 1 sleeping bag, 1 Bible to channel God's divine energy to assist with disarming the portal, 2 cans of beans, 1 buck knife to open the cans, and 1 chalk stick to mark my path. I'm considering a small chainsaw for limb sacrifice if I'm cornered by a large interdimensional being and need a quick out, but I don't have any means of halting the bleeding. I haven't found a way around this yet, but my departure growing near, I'm out of time to figure it out, as my volunteer will be arriving any day now to take me to Paris. Advice on the traversal, or even map of the layers of the catacombs would be tremendously appreciated. For those of you who don't know, the Paris catacombs are a huge underground tunnel system filled with the bones of over 6 million people. In the 18th century, cemeteries in Paris were running out of space, so bodies were moved into these tunnels, which were once old stone mines, and today a small part is open to the public, but the rest is a dark, confusing maze where people can easily get lost. Some explorers have tried to go deeper, but without maps or light, a few never make it back. To connect all of this, we need to refer to a post made by Snapped Fingers prior to starting this trip and mentioning the plan. How do I go about banishing interdimensional beings more effectively? Advice. For context, no, this is not medical. At first, I thought it was hallucinations, but that is not the case. I met some experts on this site that assured me that these are in fact interdimensional beings. With that out of the way, I came to ask about better ways to banish interdimensional beings. Currently, I only know the two methods listed below, but they are either require hassling the local church, which kicked me out, see Viridian's method, and making a big mess or putting myself in peril. Viridian's method, currently I'm using the method of mixing turpentine, a bit of my own blood, and holy water. A small glass enough to banish smaller interdimensional beings, but not larger ones. Master G's method. The other method can banish larger interdimensional beings, but at the cost of a part of one's self being sacrificed to the entity. Frankly, this method is too risky. Ended up with a hospital stay over it, among other BS. Sorry, Master G's. I appreciate the advice, though. This ties everything together and answers the lingering questions about what was really happening. Snapped Fingers had been convinced by other users that they were truly interacting with interdimensional beings and had to venture into the Paris catacombs to banish them and save the world. But in reality, it seems like someone was feeding them this idea, possibly inspired by the movie As Above, So Below, where a group discovers a portal to hell in this very same catacombs. Snapped Fingers had already started the trip, so a user who was curious for an update left a comment saying, "Hey man, how's the trip going? Also, try not to get lost down there." Snapped Fingers replied by saying, "Hey, the trip is going mostly okay, but there was some problems at the beginning and during. At the beginning, I got picked up and dropped off at some big building and had to wait a few days in this building in a wall room. It had a pretty sweet TV and a stack of movies I could watch. There was a couple who went through my things and they forbid me keeping my pickaxe and shovel, but they didn't go through my things that much, so I still have my buck knife for opening cans only. Then, when the gentleman that would be escorting me finally came, I brought up that I needed my pickaxe and shovel to shut down the hell portal, but they made me leave my shovel and pickaxe behind because they were worried I'd use them as weapons too. It's been kind of a long trip, but it's mostly been just waiting and watching movies, waiting for the gentleman mentioned previously, or later waiting for a signal from someone else to give us the go-ahead to move, which was almost always at night, which sucks, so I haven't slept very well either. Plus, it's very difficult to hide in a car when interdimensional beings start swarming the car. They made me tell them why I kept hiding, so now all the interdimensional beings are really mad and pressing themselves against the windows sometimes, and small ones are crawling inside the cabin. For context, whenever I tell people in real life about the interdimensional beings, they get really mad and start swarming later on. They already had an idea beforehand of what my mission is, so they were kind and understanding of the situation. We just got across the water today, and I'm in Calais right now, where I will be continuing my journey on my own. Although I didn't think to bring money, so I have to go on foot to Paris. I kind of think this might have been a mistake. While the couple I mentioned before gave me some Doritos for my journey, I realized I didn't account for food for the road. Actually, I have nowhere to go for shelter. I didn't account for money for a hotel or a rental car. I'm beginning to realize I'm screwed, like just now. I don't know what to do. I know I can ask for directions, but I have no refuge from these interdimensional freaks. They're still angry. I know it. And when they get the chance, they start swarming again. Jesus, I think this was a mistake. I don't even have enough money to go back. And if I get caught, I'm fucked. I don't have a way to call those guys back to even try asking for help. I don't know what to do. If I keep going, I'm going to be overtaken. If I get caught traveling illegally, I'm screwed either way. I need to clear my head. I'll post later. This was a deeply unstable individual, traveling to another country for something obscure. It's clear they were confused and not in their right mind. For a while, there were no significant updates. However, soon they made another post, which would change the whole trajectory of their mission. How do you cure possession by interdimensional beings? I am in a Discord group that has been helping me track down the source of an interdimensional incursion by interdimensional beings. These people helped unearth the truth of where these interdimensional beings are coming from, and even helped me get in contact with people to get me to the Paris catacombs and bypass the travel lockdown. Today, I believe they became possessed. And even though I have all the information I need, I know it isn't right to leave them possessed. I know they're possessed because when I told them I hired the men that can get me to the catacombs and that I'd be leaving with them to shut down the Paris catacombs hell portal, they suddenly became opposed to the entire operation, even though we all planned it together. I am still in contact with the only member of the Discord who wasn't possessed, but even he is at a loss for how I can help the others. If I fail at shutting down the hell portal, they will be forever possessed, and leaving that risk to chance just isn't right. Please help me unpossess them. It's likely that the people manipulating this user realized they had taken things too far and decided to just back out. At this point, Snapped Fingers was mentally vulnerable and had fully embraced everything they had been told. But to those who had led them down this path, it was just a game. One they had no problem abandoning, leaving Snapped Fingers completely alone. Shortly thereafter, Snapped Fingers made another post, and this time it was clear they were in serious trouble. Traveled by questionable means and didn't account for funds to proceed further. I recently hired a group of gentlemen to take me to Paris so I could shut down the hell portal in the catacombs, and I arrived in Calais, but I need to continue on my own to Paris. My problem is I didn't account for funds for really anything. I didn't consider this part of the journey. I have nowhere to go, and I'm currently posting from inside a dumpster to hide from interdimensional beings. Since there's no light because of how late it is, they're swarming outside my bin. I cannot drag this dumpster with me on my journey as it's obviously too heavy. What should I do for shelter? Snapped Fingers was now in a pretty bad situation. The user made a short post asking to be invited back to the Discord because they needed to start a car without a key. After that, they made one final post. And since then, no one has heard from them. We'll be entering the catacombs in a few hours. While I found myself in a bit of a pickle the other day, the troubles are finally over. While I am not proud to have done this, I borrowed a vehicle I found and used it to get to Paris. I have left a note inside the vehicle explaining why I took it, and I have also sent the locksmith to put it back where I found it. Right now, I am just gearing up mentally before I go inside the catacombs. As promised, I will post a video of the destruction of the portal, and I will also create a portal destruction tutorial. I need to thank Avril Screeching Artistically for getting me out of the jam I was in by calling a guy who can start a guy without keys. Thank you, Screeching Artistically. You really saved my butt. I also want to give credit to my other Discord friends who helped me uncover all the information that led to the portal's discovery. Once I shut down the portal, you will be free from your possession. Someone has asked about a time frame for when I will post an update. While I don't know how big the catacombs are, my guess is maybe a day or two before my return with videos. I have taken some test footage while I was held up inside a dumpster the other night, and honestly, the quality isn't that great, but it's alright. To make up for it, I will take more footage while I'm down there. One other thing. Someone mentioned that catacomb explorers might attempt to hinder my travel, which absolutely cannot happen. These individuals have an extremely high probability of being possessed due to their extended exposure to living in the portal epicenter, so I will be wary of their threat. Snapped Fingers was undeniably struggling with very severe mental issues. Every year, over 500,000 people enter the Paris catacombs, and most are arrested since the police patrol the area constantly. However, there are hidden entry points that only a few know about. Dangerous, uncharted passages that can easily become death traps. In the end, there are only two possibilities. Snapped Fingers was either arrested or lost their life in the catacombs, alone, where their body may never be recovered. Romangarnd. This next post comes from a user named Romangarnd. Unlike the others in this video, this one plays out more like a story, but make no mistake, it's far from normal. And if you've made it this far, you might be hoping for something a little less creepy. Well, it is, but don't let your guard down just yet, because this post, it's something out of this world, literally. An alternate life for 30 years. So I came across Steve Cantwell's experience with salvia on a podcast where he lived an alternate life for 8 years in Texas. he was in Alaska on a salvia trip that lasted about 45 seconds. Meanwhile, in my hunt for such experiences, I came across a gentleman on Reddit who shared his salvia trip at 19, where he lived an alternate life for 30 years. He was kind enough to share the complete trip report, which I have shared below. P.S. The hunt began a couple of weeks ago. Ever since my pet cat died a horrible death, and I've been having dreams forcing me to rethink and question our reality and purpose of existence. I'm in my right frame of mind, but have begun to seriously question life as we know it. Thought you may like his experience. Copy and pasting below as received. Thanks. Before starting, it's important to know what salvia is. It's a strong hallucinogenic plant that causes intense but short-lived trips. Unlike other psychedelics, its effects are unpredictable and often unsettling. This hallucinogen is pretty rare to come by, but you're about to hear the experience of someone who managed to get their hands on it, and let's just say, it didn't go well. This isn't one I've made an actual trip report on, but I have mentioned it in some comments recently. People asking about parallel lives. This is an older experience now that I had many years ago. It's always been a pretty personal thing to me, but it's definitely a parallel life experience. I was 19 when it happened. I'd gotten into this habit of tripping with mirrors at the time, so I was in my bathroom, standing in front of the sink. I had some really bad experiences prior, and honestly my plan was to try and bolt if shit got too strange. I remember with this one in particular, it seemed like nothing was happening. Everything was normal. I leaned in closer to the mirror and the pupil in one of my eyes started growing and didn't stop. It happened fast. There was no escaping it. It pulled me in like a black hole. I remember being stretched into a line and then smashed into a dot and then blinked out into darkness. That's all I really have going into it. Up to this point, this user's experience seems like a typical salvia trip. Strange, but expected. But this is where things take a much darker turn. That blink into darkness faded back out as an opening of my eyes, but I was a different person, living a different life on a whole different world. I was now a dude in my 30s, waking up from some kind of overdose. It was very intense on that end of it because I still had some strong memories of this life that you and I are in now. It took me about a year of their time to reorient myself to that reality. I couldn't even talk right for a little while because I was trying to talk like we do. Everybody thought I had brain damage. In that year, I went to sleep every night expecting to wake back up here in my bathroom. I could not accept that it was real, but it just wasn't going away. I could count time down to the second. The memories of this life eventually began to fade though. I didn't have all the little details anymore to try and make sense of it to others. Within that life, I also had some pretty big responsibilities that I had to focus on. I had a family and a house. The whole overdose thing cost me a job, but we were able to turn things around once I put my past behind me. You have to understand that this was all backwards to me. While I was there, my experience was that I had done a drug and experienced years of another life, or ours, and within that life, I did a drug that brought me back. Basically, exactly what I am doing right now. And trying to explain this is what I was doing over there too. When you are in one of these parallels like this, no matter which direction you are heading, they become your base reality for the experience. I was questioning our world, not theirs. Theirs was my actual reality for the time being. So about 30 years later, I was an old man. My kids were grown up and moved out. One of them had asked me to look for something for them in the attic. I went up there and found a box that was very out of place. In it were things from this life we are in now. It was the biggest mindfuck I think I've ever experienced in my life. In that box, though, was a pipe and the same drug I'd overdosed on. Same exact bowl, actually. It was a little burned, but still had a few tokes left. I was just so confused and felt like I was finally close to an answer, so I hit it one more time and closed my eyes. When I opened them again, I was standing in my bathroom, 19, looking at the mirror. And just like the first transition, I was all f***ed up about it. I still had to reorient, but this was salvia, so there was no waking up from an overdose. It was like 30 years of whatever the hell that was just crammed into my head all of a sudden. I think it was about 4 minutes that had passed in total. Around 3 a.m., I remember just sitting on my bathroom floor, feeling like my head was about to explode, but not in the pounding headache kind of way. I sat there for 4 hours. At one point, I just started crying because I couldn't grasp what had happened. I was still very aware of my wife and kids and wondering if I'd ever see them again. My sister didn't even knock, just slowly opened the door and asked me what was up. She was actually very crucial in helping me reorient to this reality as my name. I tried to explain it to her. My language was a little off again, but not as bad, and she was pretty much kept my family at bay while I sorted everything out. It didn't take me long to put on the mask, but mentally it did take me about another year to let it go. And that's another problem, is the whole mask idea. I don't know how to fully feel like this person that I am, but I'm trying every day. I've seen many other parallels, even on things other than salvia. With salvia, I've left the parallels altogether and experienced core self. This was significant as my longest lived and most detailed parallel experience. You know, this is really why you don't blast a whole bowl of high-level salvia extract by yourself to see something cool. That's not what this is. It is extremely powerful, and it will loosen anyone's grip on reality. Best to go in there as a no one. This must be respected as something more than a drug. You have to let go of this illusion if you wish to do salvia properly. Any and all attachments to your name must be left at the door before you cross over. This is how you bypass the parallels and reach the core self. This is how we can remember who we are. The next user on our list was a teenager whose account has since been deleted, but their story remains just as disturbing. This teen was in foster care when they stumbled upon something so unsettling it's almost unbelievable. Around 7 years ago, a post appeared on Reddit. I think I'm being watched. Is this a camera? The post had a picture attached to it which at first looked like a normal pen. However, if you look closely enough, you can see a tiny lens at the bottom right. Yes, that's right, this teen was in foster care, and someone had planted a hidden camera in their bathroom. The whole Reddit community was enraged. The user was in a pretty bad spot and didn't know how to handle this. A user named berries_cherries left a comment by saying, "Hey, stop whatever you're doing right now and call the FBI at this number. When you call them, tell them that you found a camera in your foster parents' bathroom and you believe it was set up to record you and any others using the bathroom. Tell them your age and address and ask for an agent to come to the scene. This is not something you want to leave to CPS or the locals at this point. As a cop, I can say that this is number 1, illegal, 2, abusive, 3, you need to get out of the house now. If you have any questions, shoot me a PM." After that, more followed. Even if their intention was to check on you, to make sure you're not in there shooting up heroin or something, placing a spy camera in anyone's bathroom and filming them without consent when privacy is to be expected is illegal. If you're underage and the intent was to peep on you, that's some shit whoever placed it can get in some serious trouble for you. Video voyeurism and production of explicit images of a minor are both serious charges. I would suggest you talk to someone you trust, like a teacher or a counselor, or someone who you know for sure didn't place the camera, and turn it over to the authorities. Chances are whoever placed it is going to be the first person to pop up on that SD card. A lot of people were now invested in this story, so the user decided to drop some info about himself, about how he ended up in this situation. However, this information came with a horrifying update. He wrote, "Okay, I'll write a full update / life story now. My parents died in 2013, sending my brother and me to foster care. For the past 3 to 4 years, I've lived with this guy and his dad who have done some awful / creepy shit. It would feel wrong to exclude the fact that he supported my brother and me for so long that this is unacceptable. A week ago, my brother moved out, leaving me with this guy who just put a camera facing the shower this morning. I posted this thread on my break. Now I'm off work at home. After talking with him about it, I don't want to live here anymore. I haven't for a while, but I have no one that will take me in at 16. I've built the last 3 years of my life living here. I have no idea what to do. I've tried calling CPS before. They came and left, and that can't happen again. I'm pretty much alone in this house with no one to talk to or help me. What am I supposed to do?" The user was too afraid to call the cops, fearing that if they confronted their foster parents and the police did nothing, it would only make matters worse for them. However, after getting support from the community, he told his brother, who was out of foster care, the whole thing and decided to finally notify the cops. Then updates followed. Update: CPS has been called. I have a place I can stay at if they take me when they come. Now I play the waiting game. I'll update when they come. However, the next update that they posted changes everything. That's the only reason I was hesitant to call in the first place. I've done it before, and they just left. I can only hope. Now, I know this doesn't make much sense here, but the next post they made connects all the dots about what actually happened. They later posted one last update, and after that, there has been no activity on this account. The post is titled Bathroom Camera Update. While the post itself has been deleted, but reading the comments reveals something terrifying. The police didn't do anything and left the user with the foster parents. For better context, here is what a user named Naked Viking had to say about the situation. What the fuck, did CPS say anything? Just, well, that's fucked up. Hope you don't get raped/killed. See ya. You need to get the fuck out of there, man. Another user named Curious Kerr made a comment by saying, holy shit, that's some intensive expunge shit there. I wonder why they left without OP. Why couldn't they investigate and watch the clips in their FBI van and assess at the spot? OP's guardian will delete any evidence and will get away with it. And what's going to happen with OP? Just wither and die? What the fuck? This is making me livid and making my blood boil. This was the last post made from this account, and no one has heard a single thing from him again. There were multiple people who actually contacted the authorities themselves to help the OP, however, it looks like the foster parents did get him in the end. While the OP never posted anything again, another user named 645-33546 made a post in r/best of legal advice, covering this whole thing around the same time, which reveals that the foster actually took away all the electronics from the OP, so he could not get in contact with anyone else. The post read, "What's that? Your proof foster parent is spying on you in the bathroom? Well, we'll leave you here while we look into it. Police. A teenager adopted into foster care came across a device in the bathroom they thought was a camera and brought it up on r/what is this thing? After getting it identified and alerting the appropriate authorities, they then took the camera device and let the teen stay with the foster parent whose house the camera was in. After that, the foster parent then retaliated by confiscating all electronics, save an old phone which was used for the update. It's actually a pretty messed up situation, so I hope this leads to a positive resolution, but given how it's been handled thus far, I'm not feeling optimistic. I also wasn't sure how to go about sharing this non-r/legal advice post in here, since the rules require some element of legal advice, and this is clearly a situation that involves legal advice on top of being pretty crazy. So I'll leave it to the mods on how this goes. Edit. While I was typing up the body, I realized the typo in the title and told myself I'd go back to fix it, and well, yeah, sorry. Edit 2. Clarified that police only took camera, foster parent took other electronics. This post connects all the dots and reveals that the case was buried somehow. Maybe the foster parent pulled some strings so that the OP would be left with no proof about the whole situation.